Well, good morning, and can I welcome everyone to this, the 8th meeting of the Public Audit Committee in 2026. The first item on our agenda is for the committee to decide whether or not to take agenda items 4, 5, 6 and 7 this morning in private. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. And agenda item 2 is consideration of the 2024-25 audit of NHS Ayrshire and Arran and the 2024-5 audit of NHS Grampian. I'm very pleased then to welcome to the committee this morning representatives from each of those two health boards who are going to speak to us this morning about the situation they find themselves in and their response to the Audit Scotland reports. So can I welcome this morning Gordon James, who's the interim, I think, Chief Executive of Ayrshire and Arran NHS, Leslie Bowie, who's the chair of the board, and Dr Crawford McGuffey, who is the Executive Medical Director of NHS Ayrshire and Arran. You're all very welcome. Can I also welcome from NHS Grampian Leslie Scaife-Knight, who is the Chief Executive of the Health Board. Alongside the Chief Executive is the Chair of the Health Board, Alison Evison. Good morning, Alison. And we're also pleased to be joined by the Director of Finance for NHS Grampian, Alex Stephen. You're all welcome. We've got some questions for you based on the reports and previous evidence that we've taken. But before we get to our questions, I would like to invite, first of all, Gordon James to make a short opening statement.
Thank you, Convener, for inviting myself and colleagues from NHS Ayrshire and Arran to discuss the 24-25 audit report. As Audit Scotland has highlighted, the board is not currently in a financially sustainable position. We welcome the support from Scottish Government and escalation to level 4 within the support and intervention framework for finance. I want to briefly set out the context behind our current position and the actions now underway to return the organisation to financial balance over the coming years, while importantly maintaining high quality care. NHS Ayrshire and Arran first entered a deficit in 2017-18. Although we achieved balance during the pandemic with national support, deficits have returned over the last 3 years. Since the pandemic, the patients are presenting sicker, with frailty and multiple conditions. We serve some of the most deprived communities in Scotland, alongside that a higher than average older population. As a result, we have one of the highest proportions of the population living with multiple long-term conditions in both rural and island locations. This increases care complexity and cost. We also continue to experience high levels of delayed transfers of care due to pressures on social care and care at home provision. This reduces patient flow and increases the cost of maintaining our acute bed base. Recruitment challenges in key roles add further pressure, and we are actively diversifying and upskilling our workforce to respond. In my first 6 months as Interim Chief Exec, I have focused on visible leadership and engagement. I have seen a positive culture and strong appetite across both clinical and operational teams to reform and redesign pathways to deliver better value-based care. This is central to our Delivering Caring for Ayrshire programme. Since the Audit Scotland report, we have strengthened our leadership team. As noted in the report, we have appointed a new Director of Acute Services who is driving change, and since the report brought in a temporary turnaround director and welcomed a new Interim Director of Finance in the last weeks. Together with the wider executive team, we are focused on both operational grip and long-term transformation. I have identified a number of key priorities. These are updating our corporate objectives and streamlining them. I have delivered short-term financial improvement through strengthening grip and control. We are refreshing our integrated performance management process from board to ward. We're establishing a programme management office to support savings, delivery and transformational change. As I said, we're refreshing our multi-year transformation plan aligned to the Scottish Government Service Renewal Framework and Population Health Frameworks. Key is clinically led pathway reform. We have established a pan-Ayrshire transformation board with our 3 council partners, and I'm working with chief execs, as other colleagues are, on sub-national West planning and delivery, and taking a fresh approach to planning and delivery on the West of Scotland. Through this work, my overriding priority is ensuring that clinical quality and safety remain at the centre of everything we do. We are committed to delivering high-quality care while supporting the well-being of our staff and the communities we serve. we would welcome any questions that the committee have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr James. I am now going to turn to Laura Scaife-Knight to give an opening statement from NHS Grampian. Laura.
Thank you, Convener and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting myself and NHS Grampian colleagues and for the opportunity to make this brief opening statement. I want to begin by fully acknowledging the seriousness of the challenges we face and reaffirm our commitment to making the sustained improvements that are necessary for our patients, community and staff. We are caring for more older patients with rising patient acuity, and we have seen a marked increase in multimorbidity across all age groups. Over the last 5 years, NHS Grampian has experienced a significant increase in its population aged 65 and over, with more than 6,000 additional older residents now living in the system. This demographic shift is increasing the complexity and intensity of care required across acute, community and social care services. We must ensure that our health and care system is equipped to respond to this changing pattern of demand, recognising implications for workforce, capacity and the cost of delivering safe, effective and sustainable services. Today we will share evidence of progress. I'm pleased to inform you that for the current financial year, we are confident we will deliver our £62 million savings requirement and come in below our maximum overspend target of no more than £45 million agreed by the Scottish Government. This will be a significant achievement and is the result of a sustained focus by staff across the organisation and much strengthened grip and control and financial discipline being consistently applied. Whilst 26-27 will be more challenging still, we have developed plans to deliver another £40 million worth of savings and a maximum deficit position of £36 million, and we are forging a path to get back into financial balance by 29-30. Central to this is working in a more integrated way with our system partners when it comes to service and financial planning. There is a refreshed commitment to partnership working in the North East to explore service redesign and transformation opportunities, which is critical to achieving financial sustainability. Since being escalated to level 4 of the NHS Scotland Support and Intervention Framework, we have welcomed the external diagnostic review commissioned by the Scottish Government. It informed our board-approved improvement plan, which sets out how we are responding to the recommendations from this review. The Scottish Government-chaired Fortnightly Assurance Board is providing support and scrutiny in equal measure, which I believe is key to driving improvements at the required pace. In my first 6 months as Chief Executive, I have focused on stabilising the organisation, visible and compassionate leadership, and putting people first. Key to this is our new culture programme, which focuses on staff health and wellbeing, leadership and equality. Creating a continuous improvement culture and becoming a learning organisation is also key. In conclusion, we in no way shy away from the challenges we face or underestimate the distance we still have to travel. However, there are very strong grounds for optimism. We are on track to deliver our financial and savings plan for the year, and we continue to reduce our longest wait patients. The improvements we are making to culture, governance and leadership underpin everything we do. We are working collaboratively with partners locally, regionally and nationally on our improvements and are investing in these vital relationships, recognising they are key to our success. This includes maximising our engagement and leadership in the new subnational arrangements in the NHS in Scotland, which I believe presents further opportunities to improve services and access for our communities and the people of Scotland. Most importantly, the dedication of our 18,000 staff give me confidence that NHS Grampian can continue to deliver sustainable improvement, better outcomes and high-quality care for the communities we serve. We take accountability, openness and transparency very seriously as a board. We therefore welcome the scrutiny of this committee and look forward to answering your questions today. Thank you.
Thank you. The reports that we have before us are pretty hard-hitting, I have to say, and they talk in the context of Ayrshire and Arran about not being in a financially sustainable position, about the financial challenges being unprecedented. When it comes to Grampian, it talks about a cost base which is unsustainable. Do you accept the findings including those that are contained in these two reports? I'll turn to Mr James first of all.
Yes, I do accept the findings that the current cost base is unsustainable. However, we are doing, as I've outlined in my opening statement, we're taking multiple actions to address that. Some of the key areas we're focusing on, and certainly in my leadership in the short term I've been here, is focusing on grip and control. So we have taken a number of actions around about performance management. We have been looking at things like vacancy control panels, etc. We have realigned our budget processes for next year. So we are taking a lot of short-term action to improve the financial position. And I know the Audit Scotland report said that they did not believe that we would achieve 33.2 million. Our month-end forecast position is an improved position on that. So we're looking to outturn at this moment in time at 29.7 million, which is obviously over £3 million improvement from what is noted in the Audit Scotland report.
Okay, thank you. And we will drill into a bit more detail of those financial positions. And turning to NHS Grampian, do you accept the findings of the Audit Scotland report?
I do accept the findings of the Audit Scotland report. I think it's crystal clear in that NHS Grampian will only achieve financial sustainability in the medium term with local system redesign or changes to funding levels. From a funding perspective, until recently, the NRAC share was falling from an NHS Grampian perspective. We welcome for 26-27 the £11.4 million allocated to Grampian, which takes us closer to NRAC parity. In terms of redesign of the local system, we have already made some steps forward there, and we must absolutely lean into that space as we go into the next year or so. We are stabilising and have arrested spend over the last year. The foundations are now in place to see the shift towards redesign and transformation that are needed. We are in the process of recruiting a Director of Strategy, Transformation and Performance. We have well-established processes with our system partners, including our local authority partners and integration joint boards, to look at integrated financial and service planning. And we have stood up a North East Transformation Group, which will be the delivery vehicle for system redesign in the North East. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, and I'll come back and ask you some more detailed questions about some of the things that you covered there. But I'm going to turn first of all to Graham Simpson, who's got some questions to put to you. Graham.
Thanks, convener, and welcome panel. Just reading the two reports, as the convener said, they are quite stark, and the figures are concerning. I mean, NHS Grampian's 24-25 overspend was the largest of any health board in Scotland, and Ayrshire and Arran had the highest amount of outstanding loans across the NHS in Scotland. Now, I appreciate things have possibly moved on, but if I can ask you, Mr James, Ayrshire and Arran has just gone into level 4, well, in February, I think, yeah, this month. How did that come about?
In terms of the level floor, so that was via discussion with the Director General and the Chief Executive for NHS in Scotland. I should start by saying that I welcome escalation to level 4 on the support and intervention framework. I think, as my colleague has said, in 2017-18, and it's fair to say that one of the challenges has been, and you can see in the Audit Scotland report for NHS in Scotland 2025, that we do have the highest level of cumulative brokerage, as noted. So we have, over the years, started to deliver on our savings. So we are projected to deliver more this year than we have last year. So we have started to turn the corner. However, I do recognise that over the previous years, the recurring nature of those savings hasn't been at the level that would obviously see us being de-escalated from that level.
And how much savings are you anticipating delivering this year?
So in terms of this year, we are expecting to deliver over £28 million worth of savings. So last year we delivered £26.5 million, so that's additional £2 million of savings this year, and that will be the highest savings achieved in a year that the board has seen.
Are these one-off savings or are they recurring?
So there is a split between recurring and non-recurring savings. So of that 28.3 million, approximately 16 million is recurring, and the balance, just over 12 million, is non-recurring. But we fully recognise as we move forward, we need to shift the balance from non-recurring into recurring savings.
Okay.
And that is why we have re-baseline our budget process this year, and as you know, we are going through our budget process setting for next year at this moment in time.
Okay, if I ask you again, I'll just ask you this question, and then I'll ask the same question to you, Laura. So you both said that you're making significant savings. What is it you're doing that's different that enables you to make these savings? Are there procedures that you're not doing? What's changed?
Certainly in Ayrshire is both short-term and longer-term. So we've started on some of our transformation journey, but in the short term, we've had a real focus on, for example, nursing agency. So our nursing agency, if I go back 2 years, we're projecting it to be half of what it was 2 years in terms of agency spend. So that's real grip and control. And also, where possible, recruiting nursing staff as they come out of university. So that's been a big focus. Similarly with medical locums, and Crawford could add to it. But again, we're forecasting almost a 50% reduction in medical locum costs as we go through this year as well. So they have been areas of focus as examples. In terms of longer term transformation, we have, as an example, moved all our elective orthopaedics to a single site in Ayr. So Ayr is going to become a centre of excellence for elective care, and that's an example where the board has taken a difficult decision to do so. And it's those sort of opportunities that we want to build on in the future, and tackling waiting lists, having a centre of excellence for elective care will be one of them.
Let me just ask you about that locums figure, 50% cut. How are you managing to do that?
I don't know if Crawford would want to come in.
So the difficulty of the medical workforce is over the years we've not been a top recruiter, and the medical workforce is not right-sized, and so that, in terms of trying to keep up the quality and safety of care, then sometimes that drives you into high-cost alternatives. But what we did in 2017, in terms of that more kind of long-term perspectives, we built up a programme called the Best Medical Workforce. We went back to basics, we right-sized the workforce, and we drove out agency locums at all other levels except for consultant level. This year, we're predicted to deliver another £1.25 million in terms of savings by grip and control. I think we're going to exceed that target by some £350,000 by the end of the year, and that's around about the working efficiently, in terms of making sure that all agency locums come through direct engagement, make sure that we are adhering to the guidance in the health and care staffing legislation in terms of hourly rate, and maximising our attempts to recruit to that permanent workforce. And we've had some recent success that's brought that cost down.
So if I can cut through that, are you employing more doctors and consultants?
We are trying to move that dial from high cost, variable quality agency locums into permanent staff, while at the same time we've got a programme of diversification of the medical workforce.
Right. On to Grampian. How have you made your savings?
Okay, thank you for the question. So in terms of savings for this year, we are on track to deliver £62 million of savings, and that's after £50.5 million worth of savings last year. In terms of how we've done that and what is different, I think I would point to a number of things here. Firstly, the grip and control and discipline and rigour we have put into the system, and holding colleagues to account to live within their means as best they can, including budget holders across the organisation. Strengthen governance in the organisation, including our Value and Sustainability Programme Board and Delivery Group. We also have a new non-executive director-chaired Financial Recovery Board, where we can do deep dives into areas that are off track in terms of the savings plan. The areas in terms of the work streams that we are working through in terms of savings include medical pay and productivity, nursing and midwifery, procurement, pharmacy, estates and facilities, and of course our integration joint boards, to give some examples. I think perhaps what is in part at the heart of your question is around any perhaps impact adversely on patient safety, quality and experience. And just to give some reassurance, we have a quality impact assessment panel which is chaired by our 3 clinical executive directors, where they formally assess any savings plans as they are coming through the pipeline and being considered. They carefully consider any adverse impact on safety and quality, and with that, staff experience and well-being. That's a formal process before any savings are approved, and there is line of sight through our board governance processes, including the Clinical Governance Committee. Thank you.
Okay, I hear all that, but what I'm not getting is a picture in my head of specifics. Can you give us any examples?
Of course, in terms of specifics in relation to savings, we have reduced over the last 3 years nurse agency spend from £14 million to £4 million. In terms of medical locum spend, we have, again in that same time currency, reduced medical locum spend from 23 million down to 17 million.
And probably what I asked Aisha and Aaron, does that mean you're employing more nurses and doctors?
It does. In terms of our workforce trends, I think it's fair to say if you look across all territorial health boards over the last decade in particular, there's been an increase in terms of workforce. From a Grampian perspective, we've seen a slightly different trend in the timeline of that. So our workforce has increased in the 5 years post-pandemic. That includes some increases to nursing staff, in part because of the legislation around the Health and Care Staffing Act, but also the requirement to ensure patient safety, given we have a number of non-standard bed areas open, some escalation beds. With that comes additional staffing requirements as well. Similarly, in terms of medical staff, we have increased marginally, but we are not out of sync with the rest of Scotland in terms of numbers.
Can I ask you, are there any procedures that you're not doing that you used to be doing? Because I know that the Scottish Government is looking at this, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong in that, but in a previous session, for example, we were told that varicose veins were not being treated anymore, or they were certainly considering that. So is there anything like that Grampian is not doing?
There's some work, indeed, Gordon and I have been involved in this with our medical directors in terms of the board chief executives, looking across Scotland in terms of procedures considered to be of limited clinical value. Yeah. That's a pan-Scotland approach. That's it. Just been published and shared across boards within the last couple of months, and all boards are in the process of making sure they have the right governance in place in the organisations, indeed led by our medical directors, so that can be taken place, and we can make sure there's a consistent approach across Scotland, which I think is hugely important.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. James.
And again, Crawford may want to add, but there is a national protocol in place.
Yeah.
So that's published by Scottish Government, the CMO's office, and so all boards are putting structure in place to follow that national protocol.
So I guess the question to both boards is, are there any procedures that you're not doing, or are we not there yet?
We're not quite there yet. Given the protocol that Gordon's just described has literally just been shared with boards within the last 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay. Well, we've got Caroline Lamb coming in front of us. Maybe I can ask her that, as I've done before. Final question for me. If you don't meet deficit targets, what happens? The government said there's to be no more brokerage. So if there's no more brokerage, what happens?
So I think from an Ayrshire and Arden point of view, as I said, our month 10 forecast position is 29.7 million. Government have offered us deficit support funding of up to 25 million. So ultimately there will be a gap of £4.7 million. And so we need to work clearly with auditors, Audit Scotland, to understand how that's reflected in their accounts. But basically it will be a loss within their accounts, is my understanding.
You'll make a loss?
Yes. But we're still working through that process in terms of how that will look. We need to work with our auditors on that basis.
But you won't be going to the government to say, can you make up the shortfall?
Discussions with government so far have been very clear that the £25 million is the limit that has been set for NHS Ayrshire and Arden. So
if you can't hit that, what's the impact?
Ultimately, we've got a gap of £4.7 million.
So how do you fill that gap?
We would show a loss in our accounts, is my understanding.
Can you afford to do that?
The honest answer is no, we can't afford to do that. That is the reality of the situation we're in, and that is why we are really, all of us collectively, and the leadership team are absolutely focused in improving the position as we go forward in the future years. And we're working with government just now with regards to obviously our 3-year budget plan for the next years. So that is currently the process we're going through.
And same question for Grampian.
Thank you. Perhaps if I begin and ask Alex to add a little more detail. In terms of, Gordon is absolutely right, the deficit support funding has replaced the brokerage arrangement for the NHS in Scotland. For NHS Grampian, that means equates to 121 million over the period of 4 years. As described a little earlier, we are on track to come in below our £45 million maximum deficit. That comes with a requirement to deliver £62 million worth of savings, which we are on track to do. As we look to the year ahead, to 26-27, the maximum deficit position moves to £36 million, and we will deliver a £40 million savings programme for the year ahead, which is well advanced. Alex, might I ask you to add to that, please?
Yeah, I would just maybe say in relation to Mr James's comments that the issue about the loss or the overspend in the financial accounts is something that we're working on nationally at the moment to figure out what the presentation looks like in relation to that. So I think the comments that Mr James made in relation to there, and that's a work in progress that needs to be undertaken with auditors and with the Scottish Government.
But you really only need to worry about Grampian.
Well, that's right. That's correct, yes.
Yeah, that is correct. So just to be clear, Laura, your position, as you've described, is you will meet the savings targets. You won't be in the deficit that Mr James is in.
Yes, we have well-developed plans for 26-27, as I say, £40 million target. We already have identified in excess of £30 million. So we are as confident as we can be. We will achieve another £40 million. And as touched on a few moments ago, that does mean over the course of 3 years, we would be on track to achieve £150 million worth of savings in the organisation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I think the Deputy Convener's got a short supplementary question to put to you. Jamie.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I do. Good morning. I'll be asking some further questions later in the session, but I just want to pick up on this point about brokerage and support funding. I'll ask it to anyone on the panel that feels comfortable answering it, but can you just describe to me the difference here? Because my understanding is that the brokerage essentially were loans to the Health Board, which at some point there'd be an expectation of them being paid back. You will have watched previous evidence sessions. We've heard that there's no expectation that you'll ever be able to pay any of that money back. Where are you going to find, for example, in Ayrshire and Arden, £130 million hidden away in your account somewhere? What is the difference between what the government previously were doing to help you break even in terms of brokerage money versus deficit support funding? I'm using that specific phrase because you've used it What is deficit support funding? Is it a loan, or is it just a in-year cash injection that there's no expectation you have to pay back?
Previously, the Scottish Government were operating the brokerage system. So if you overspent at the end of the financial year, you would apply to the Scottish Government, to get that brokerage. So from an NHS Grampian perspective, we applied for brokerage at the end of last financial year and were awarded that £65 million. You are correct that there's no that is a loan, and there will be an expectation to pay that back when you return to financial balance. But at the moment, we do not know what those terms are, but that expectation is still there. The deficit support funding is slightly different because the deficit support funding has been agreed at the start of the financial year. So for NHS Grampian, we'd have been agreed with a £45 million target. Helpfully, we've got a £36 million target for next year and a £25 million target for the year after that. So it's going to taper down that deficit support, but there is no requirement, as I understand, to repay the deficit support.
So, sorry, just to clarify, there's no requirement to pay it back, but it's agreed at the beginning of the year and it's predicated on you meeting your savings targets. If you don't meet your savings targets, do you not get the deficit support?
My understanding, well, to deliver the deficit support target, you'll need to make your savings targets to get there. So if you make your savings targets, you get to your deficit support target, then you will receive that deficit support funding.
Right. Can I ask Ayrshire and Aaron the same question?
So my understanding is exactly the same as my colleague.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I've got some questions which are targeted at NHS Grampian. So in these reports, we read a lot about loans and brokerage, loans outstanding, projected cumulative financial deficits. But at the end of the report, there is a performance indicator. And so, you know, I might think it might be a good thing that Grampian is way over budget because the performance outputs reflect that, and they're spending this extra money in order to improve the quality of service for the people of Grampian. But when I look at the appendix, it's a pretty mixed picture. I mean, you do well, for example, on CARMS referrals, you do well on drug and alcohol treatment, but when I look at measures like cancer treatment, referral for treatment within 62 days, you're way down at 52%. When I look at things like the 4-hour wait at A&E, you're down at 66% in meeting that target. 12 weeks first outpatient appointment, down at 58%. So you're way off the standard and lower than the Scottish average. So can you explain a little bit more about how not only are you in some financial difficulty, but you are also not meeting the expected standards of patient care and NHS performance?
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. If you look at our performance scorecard, if you like, it presents a very mixed picture at the moment. In the organisation over the last 6 to 12 months, we've had 3 very clear priorities, recognising the size of the challenge. We've narrowed back the priorities, and that includes finance, which you've already touched on, planned care, so addressing our longest wait patients, and we've made significant progress, notwithstanding some challenges we've had in terms of the shutdown of our central decontamination unit over the last 4 months. We've made significant progress in terms of reducing 52-week waiters in relation to planned care. The area we are struggling most with, which is the 3rd priority, is unscheduled care, and we are far from where we would wish to be for any of our patients at the moment. We have received £22 million worth of support from Scottish Government to support delivery of the operational improvement plan priorities. That includes £9 million for unscheduled care, where we are a significant national outlier in terms of performance, and £12 million to support those planned care improvements that I've described. In terms of the unscheduled care area, because I'm mindful that is the area where we are some distance from where we would want to be, we have a whole system improvement plan in place. As I've just described, we have £9 million worth of funding from Scottish Government to support improvements. And there are 3 areas that I really want to signal where we are absolutely focused on making the improvements that are necessary for our patients. And I should say the improvement board that we've put in place for unscheduled care is quite deliberately chaired by our Chief Officer from Aberdeenshire IJB. So this is owned by the entire system, which is entirely appropriate. And the three areas we're given focus, laser-like focus to, so we can see as rapid improvement as possible, are reducing avoidable admissions. So that is things like our expanded flow navigation centre, frailty at the front door, so we have geriatricians within our emergency department, which is reducing admissions into the hospital, and an expansion of our hospital at home model. The second area, and this is an area that is well within our gift to improve and where we are falling short at the moment, is improving discharge and flow through the hospital. So big focus on discharge to assess. So instead of assessing patients within hospital, doing those multidisciplinary team assessments in people's home and assessing those longer term care requirements. We must do better in terms of our own pre-noon discharge rates. They are at just 10 to 12% at the moment. Actually, if you look at class-leading hospitals, they are closer to 30%. So we know we've got some way to go there. But also, we've opened 2 additional discharge lounges over the last 8 weeks, and we're just setting up an integrated discharge hub. The third area that is absolutely key to us seeing the step change that is necessary, that is work in progress, is reconfiguring our acute bed base within the Aberdeen Royal Infirmary in particular. This means increasing our frailty beds and co-locating our frailty beds, so we create a frailty floor at the ARI. That is work in progress, and I hope the cumulative effect of those 3 dimensions I've just described will begin to see a step change in our performance, which is much needed for our patients and local communities.
Okay, and I accept, Laura Skiff-Knight, you've inherited some of this as the incoming Chief Executive, but why did we get into a position, and I suppose someone's got to have this, but why did we get into a position where Grampian's got the lowest bed base in Scotland?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think there's no escaping that. We do have the lowest acute bed base in Scotland, and just for extra context, Grampian has 1.4 beds per 1,000 population compared to the Scottish national average of 2.4. If we look at our performance in terms of unscheduled care, the removal of beds from the system over a period of time is certainly a factor. That includes acute beds, specifically frailty beds, but it also includes fewer community beds, fewer mental health beds and fewer care home beds. And over a decade, because you can imagine we've got underneath the bonnet of this, there's a significant reduction in beds across the system. Some where we have tried to do redesign work and shift the balance of care, and perhaps it hasn't had the impact that we would have expected. But along with beds, because beds is part of the description in terms of why we are where we are in terms of performance, there's also no shying away from the changes in demographics in terms of the increases to over 65s. If we look in Aberdeenshire, between 2018 and 2028, 40% increase forecast for those over age 75, which is significant. So not just higher acuity, a real steep increase in terms of multiple morbidities, and that changes the type of demand, the type of care we need to deliver. And I actually think we have a system that is out of balance at the moment, and what we're trying to do is put the system back in balance through the changes that I've described.
But just so I'm clear about that then, what do you see increase in bed capacity as being part of the answer to the challenge and the changing demographics that you face?
Not at this moment in time. Firstly, there are some changes we need to make to our own internal efficiencies. I've described the work we need to do to improve flow through and out of our hospitals. So our own discharge practice of really good practice day in and day out. So that will make us more efficient as an organisation, but improve flow through and out of the hospital. The work I've described it to reconfigure our current acute bed base and increase frailty capacity is the next step forward. And I'd like to see, by doing those 2 things, along with the wider system changes, where we can get to. If there is still a gap and performance isn't where it needs to be, then I think we can have a discussion around what additional beds we may need at that stage.
Okay, and Healthcare Improvement Scotland carried out an inspection, didn't they, of Dr Gray's, and had some concerns and recommendations around those concerns. Could you perhaps tell us what you're doing to address those issues identified by Healthcare Improvement Scotland?
Yeah, of course I can. And firstly, I want to say that Dr Gray's Hospital is a really important anchor institution in Moray, providing critical clinical services. And for context for those who don't know, Dr Gray's Hospital is the smallest district general hospital in Scotland, and with that faces similar challenges to other rural and remote hospitals, especially when it comes to workforce and recruitment. You're absolutely right, Convener. The Healthcare Improvement Scotland and NHS Education for Scotland wrote to us back in February of last year to raise concerns in relation to various aspects of leadership, governance and workforce, including recruitment concerns at Dr Gray's Hospital. We have done a number of things since, recognising the seriousness of these concerns, and they include some very focused work around integrated acute pathways between Aberdeen Royal Infirmary and Dr Gray's Hospital. So a focus on 3 clinical specialties initially over the last 12 months, orthopaedics, cardiology and endoscopy, to ensure teams can work more closely together, make sure we have single waiting lists, single vetting arrangements and more resilience in those services. We now have single leadership arrangements in place across our 4 acute sites, so Dr Gray's Hospital, Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, the maternity unit and the Children's Hospital under a single leadership arrangement, and that is a new Chief Officer for Acute who came into a post in May of last year. And with that, single arrangements around acute governance spanning all of those 4 acute sites. We have a refreshed focus on our relationships with Healthcare Improvement Scotland and NHS Education for Scotland. In fact, our board chair and I look forward to welcoming the chair and chief executive of those organisations to NHS Grampian on the 20th of March to share our improvements to date. And our Clinical Governance Committee plays a really pivotal role in terms of overseeing the progress following the concerns that were raised by his and NES. And actually, just tomorrow afternoon at our Assurance Board meeting with Scottish Government colleagues, Dr Gray's Hospital and our progress is on that agenda. Thank you.
OK, thank you. Now, you mentioned Alison Evison, and she's been sitting there very quietly, and you may want to bring her in on this, my final question, for now anyway, which is one of the things that stood out in the report and was something which I think concerned us, was that one of the financial challenges that the Health Board has had is having to find significant overspends for the integrated joint boards. And the breakdown appears in the report as being an overspend that a financial gap that had to be plugged by the Health Board in the IJBs amounted to £6.4 million for Aberdeen City. But in the Shire, in Aberdeenshire, the gap that had to be plugged was £13 million. I mean, could you explain why that is and how that has come to pass?
Okay, thank you for the question. If I get us started, in terms of, if we look at the deficit position for the IJBs, going back to the report, the audit report referring to 24-25, I think it's fair to say that the IJB deficits increased from 37 million to 49 million between 23-24 and 24-25. And also for 24-25, there was a deficit support contribution from NHS Grampian of 22.4 million, and that was an increase from 7 million the previous year. If we look at the KPMG diagnostic report, which was one of the many aspects of support we've received as an organisation, it was published in October of last year. One of the many really helpful recommendations from that review was a suggestion to us as an organisation that there was more work to do in terms of the financial reporting in the organisation and oversight of IJB financial reporting, but also scrutiny of IJB financial performance, and we have made significant progress in that area. I touched on the Finance Recovery Board earlier, and our IJB colleagues have been in attendance at that meeting in terms of the deep dives I've described to describe their progress, and do attend the Assurance Board, chaired by the Scottish Government, on a regular basis to provide updates. I'm pleased to say the overspends for both IJBs and NHS Grampian are reducing, and we are working in a much more integrated way with our system partners, including IJBs, as we look to plan for 26-27. So we've got oversight of all of the savings that are planned across the system, so that we don't end up in a position of making a decision in this part of the system that has an unintended consequence in that part of the system. So still more to do, but I think we're making some really positive steps forward.
Okay. Alice.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question as well. Historically, in the North East, there's been really good relationships between the three IJBs, between the councils and the NHS Grampian. I think that was something that was really a feature of 2015-16 period. I think that situation, though, led to people working independently and working totally separately and not coming together in the way we are now, and actually looking at impacts across the system. All those issues that we've described here about the demographic changes, about the pressure on beds, about the increased acuity of older people needing more care at home, obviously that has been a huge impact on the IJBs as well. And also they're trying to do their work about supporting adults with disabilities and children with disabilities as well. And so it's come to a big point where we need to do something, and that moving now from the position of actually all getting on with each other and having those conversations, which historically Grampian was known for, is now coming to that space where we actually need to sit down together. We need to work out impact of one budget decision on somebody else. Where is actually the most sensible place to have that programme of care? Where is the most sensible place for that bed to be? And how can we actually think about putting patients first and thinking about the pathway of the patient through the system and what the patient is experiencing through that? Because obviously in doing that as well, you're also supporting your staff to deliver the work they need, because they are seeing what they came into the professions they're in to do. They're seeing that they are able to do it as well with the outcomes that they themselves want. So I think the situation we're now in of working together, we've got the North East Transformation Group being established where we can come together. We've got the Director of Finances working with Alex, coming together to actually looking at, right, this is the situation we're in, this is the pressures we're facing, how do we actually understand each other better and move forward? I think that was maybe the journey we've been on with the IJBs, and it's good to be in that position now, to be actually looking together and moving forward. So the deficits did appear in a way in a situation where there wasn't that coming together there is now. So hadn't been put forward on the budget pages as we would expect to be from outside. But obviously now, working together on a more regular basis, we are integrating our planning with the IJBs in a far greater extent.
Okay, and it probably won't be us, but I'm sure that future public audit committees will be interested in seeing whether that is the progress that is being made. I'm now going to invite Colin Beattie to put some questions to you. Colin.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to explore bits around governance and leadership, which have been highlighted in the report, and perhaps I can start with Ayrshire and Aaron. In relation to service reform, and I'm quoting bits here from the report, in relation to service reform, the auditor recommended that more focused and effective leadership was needed to drive the change and to promote a culture of challenge. Further on, there's discussion around leadership capacity, which was constrained by a vacancy in the acute director role, which I understand now has been filled. When was it actually filled?
I think I don't know the exact date. August 20.
August
24.
Yeah, August 24.
Okay. And it says here also, to help with the board's leadership capacity, the Chief Executive worked with the Scottish Government to secure external support, Vindian Associates, from August 24. Are they still working with you?
So Viridian Associates they're working with us until the end of the current financial year. So they finish with us on the 31st of March this year. So
and what have they exactly been doing?
So
I presume they're fairly costly.
So they have brought a skill set and expertise, predominantly around about data analytics, looking at savings opportunities and they have helped formulate the savings plan in current year, and also part of our savings opportunities for next year as well. So that's been a key focus. They've brought some specific expertise round about workforce planning, job planning within that, linking to safe staffing legislation that Laura mentioned as well, and looking at how we can right-size our workforce as we move forward. So they've also been looking at productivity of our theatre suites, so how can we maximise the productivity through our theatre suites as well. So we've targeted in a number of key areas that we know that we can show positive improvement. In terms of the overarching elements, as noted in the report, I think I said in my opening statement, there's about 7 areas of key focus. Part of that has been engaging with clinical and operational colleagues. So I had a full event with over 100 clinical leaders and operational leaders across the service, and that focus with Crawford in his role as Executive Medical Director, really focusing on clinically led service change as we move forward. So I believe within the organisation we have an absolute appetite to change our services, and we're working on the basis of delivering our Caring for Ayrshire programme, and that's all about the right care in the right place. And we know that sometimes the right care is not in our community hospitals at this moment in time. So we need to move care from, where appropriate and clinically appropriate, from our community hospitals into primary care, into community care. And like Laura, we are establishing a Pan-Ayrshire transformation board. We have met once, we're meeting tomorrow, so that's myself and the 3 chief execs of the North East and South Ayrshire Council. We're agreeing the terms of reference, and there's going to be 5 areas of focus within that. First area is going to be safe and affordable hospital care. We've got a specific focus on a Pan-Ayrshire basis around about AWIs, as noted in the delayed discharge report that came to committee last week. We're looking, where possible, around about community-led services and some shared services within that space as well. Digital is a key focus, and how do we streamline our digital systems across just health and social care. And the last one is focused on staff and public communication.
Just to come back to what I originally said about the constraints in leadership capacity, which seem to be linked here to a vacancy in the acute director role, but that can't be the sole reason for lack of leadership capacity. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had consultants in working with you for such an extended period. So as I said, we've now filled the Director of Acute Services role. But that in itself is not going to cure all the leadership deficiencies.
No. We've also brought in a temporary turnaround director who's supporting the change programme, again supporting the grip and control element and the longer-term transformational change as well. And as Crawford mentioned, we are using, and I think it's really important that we take a clinical approach to pathway and service change, because it needs to be right for our patients and clearly our staff. So we're using our clinical structures that we've got to move that change. I think it's fair to say that within Ayrshire and Arn, pre-pandemic, we had our Delivering Caring for Ayrshire programme, and it set out ambitions within that. During the pandemic, unfortunately, that stalled, just given the situation that the country was in. Where we are at this moment in time is we are now into the delivery of that Caring for Ayrshire programme. So if I look from an acute point of view, as I mentioned earlier, from a surgical element, we are looking at creating a centre of excellence for elective surgery. So really tackling those long waits in a high quality, high productive way. So that's one core foundation of our programme. Another core foundation is our emergency care, and looking at how do we construct that across our whole system, both from a primary, community and acute point of view. As an example, within Ayrshire and Arran, we established the first flow navigation centre in Scotland. There are 12 pathways in that flow navigation centre, and that keeps about 11,000 patients a month from coming into our hospital settings, where those patients are appropriately dealt with and seen within community settings. So we want to expand that model as we move forward, look at building on a sub-national west basis, opportunity around about virtual capacity. So where can we expand virtual wards? One of the government commitments around about further expansion of hospital at home as well is an area that we're focusing on.
Still in leadership, when Bindi and Associates leave at the end of this financial year, they've obviously, from what you're saying, been instrumental in moving you forward in many different ways and providing skills that you did not have. When they depart, are you satisfied that you have the leadership skills within NHS, Ayrshire and so on, to carry this forward, to keep the momentum going? Do you have the capacity?
So I believe we have the capacity, and the reason I believe we have the capacity is over the last months we've taken the decision to establish our own in-house programme management office. We did not have that before, and Viridian Associates provided some of that element. So we are establishing a programme management office which will look again at both our in-year savings plans and, secondly, our longer-term transformation. So we're actually building that capacity in-house. So we're in that transition phase just now. We already have some people within post, and we're in that transition phase so that we are then self-sufficient. I think also in welcoming the escalation to level 4 in the support and intervention framework, we will work with Scottish Government as well to understand any other opportunities, like we have done in Grampian, where they can support us on that. And I should say they have been just now. So we're working with the Finance Delivery Unit, which was set up within Scottish Government Health Finance, and they have been doing a lot of work with us round about transformation. As an example of that, as we're looking at our medicines management and benchmarking use of medicines across the system, we're looking at our workforce and comparative indicators, again, across the system. One of the comments within the report was round about reporting through our committees. We've enhanced our financial reporting to make it more succinct and clear, and learning from colleagues within NHS Lanarkshire. So some of that support has started to come, and obviously will be further enhanced as we move into the next year.
Just turning to the board, are we satisfied that the board is now receiving adequate information to be able to respond to and properly scrutinise the challenges that are facing that board, and to hold the senior leaders within the team to account?
Yeah, I'm satisfied. I think what we've done is we did a self-assessment. We looked at the skills we had in the board, and actually we shaped the board in recent years to be really finance and audit and risk focused. Of our 14 members, 10 of them have financial skills. We have 4 qualified accountants that sit in the board. One of those chairs a performance management committee which looks at not only service but financial performance, and another 2 of those accountants also sit in that same committee. We've also, as a result of the assessment, one of our improvement actions was to introduce, we're calling it PGC Lite. It's an additional performance governance committee looking only at our financial management report, so that every month the non-executive members in particular get an extra opportunity to scrutinise in detail our financial reports. In addition to that, we've had several finance workshops looking in detail at savings and what's been brought forward, and I think those things have helped to strengthen our governance. And we certainly have a broad range of skills, experience and different perspectives on the board. Looking to the next cycle, when we come out to go and recruit again, what I am looking to do is actually try to bring on more programme management experience, so that I'm looking for someone that will come on the board with a proven track record in programme management, delivering major transformation projects, so that again we can bring the right level of scrutiny and challenge as we move forward in our PMO.
One of the big deficiencies that we've seen in previous situations such as this is the lack of challenge from board members. Are you satisfied that there is adequate challenge from board members, and do you have any examples?
examples. So I'm satisfied we have adequate challenge, particularly in the area of finance. We very closely align all of our committees, all of our governance practices against the blueprint for good governance. As I say, we've got a strong and diverse set of non-executives in particular, and they have the skills. Examples of challenge. Gordon's going to provide me one, I think.
So I think a fair example, certainly in my short term, I think it was probably month 1 or 2 since I joined, was round about the risk assessment and deliverability of savings. And that certainly came from the non-execs, whereby they were very focused on almost like a RAG status, an achievement of savings plans, and that came in. And that meant that as part of our financial process and our financial forecasting process, we have changed the presentation to non-execs via Performance Governance Committee and then into the board, and we now produce a best case, most likely and worst case position. So we're now doing sensitivity analysis round about our forecast position, and that's not something that happened before, and that's something that came from the non-execs. So that would be a specific example I would give. I think just in answering that question as well, one of the things I did, and it was a board workshop in October, is we were very open with the board, and I went back to 2012 and we did a full analysis of why we are where we are. And that was to be very open with the board and understanding where we are. So, for example, where have we moved in terms of medicine costs? Where have we moved in terms of a profile of workforce, etc.? Where are we in terms of our, I'll call them activity measures, you know, inpatient, day case, outpatients, etc., to ensure the board, as we were going through this financial year, and we have that clear base as we go into the next financial year, we absolutely understand where we were, because that was one of the elements that was noted in the Audit Scotland report as well, and that was undertaken in October.
And just one last question for Air Sharon Aaron. What progress have you made towards getting a permanent chief executive?
So I can answer that. In agreement with the Scottish Government, we have decided to substantively go out to substantive recruitment probably around the April timeframe. We have a contract arrangement for Gordon to remain with us until the end of October, and our plan would be that by that time we'll have a substantive post filled.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I can turn to Grampian now. Obviously, still about governance and leadership. There's been a pretty high turnover of leadership posts in Grampian. Chief Executive, Medical Director, the Chief Officers in all 3 IGBs. And there's still upcoming change coming. How are you managing that? I mean, this is the continuity in post is quite an important thing quite frequently. You've got this huge change. Are we to view it positively or negatively?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. So you're absolutely right. There's been a huge churn and change at the top of the organisation, including chief executives. For me, leadership stability is absolutely critical to stabilising the whole organisation, and I think we've made some real important progress. For myself, coming in September of last year, substantive chief executive, and we have a substantive director of public health. I touched on earlier, we have the chief officer for acute, who was recruited in May of last year. We have a substantive medical director who's been in post just over a year now. I'm recruiting now a director of strategy, transformation and performance, and all of our IJB chief officers as of autumn of last year are now in substantive posts. So I think we're making some really good progress in terms of stabilising the executive team in particular, and making sure we get that stability, and making sure then we move forward as that executive team. And there's an executive team development programme starting in the next couple of weeks. We have had some additional support through escalation funding, which we welcomed both last year and also moving into 26-27. So I appointed, just to coincide with my own arrival, an interim director of improvement. That post will be replaced by the Substantive Director of Strategy, Transformation and Performance I've just described, but also through the escalation funding, which is £500,000 for 26-27, which we welcome. I've taken the decision with Scottish Government and Assurance Board support to bring in a site director for the Aberdeen Royal Infirmary and also a Deputy Medical Director to support improvements to unscheduled care, as touched on earlier.
Turning to the board, obviously you heard the questions I was asking about board, the skills, experience, willingness to challenge. Are you satisfied that you've got all these things, the right skills, the right experience, and people who are prepared to challenge?
Yes, thank you for that question as well. There's been a real focus over the last 3 years or so on the board itself and the skills of the board. Really keen to have done a skills matrix of the board, assess the skills we've got and focus on the skills that we need moving forward. And our recruitment recently has been responding to that. So we do have a board that has the skills required to move forward and support NHS Grampian and the people across Grampian as well. So that is an absolutely key part of that. The work the board does itself, of course, is absolutely fundamental as well. And we are also on a journey through the board, improving board governance. We've done our self-assessment through the Blueprint for Good Governance, of course, but from that we've also developed our own assessment and our own needs of what we do to go forward. A part of that is how we analyse risk, and the mitigations against risk was a huge piece of work that extended over a course of a whole year at first to understand where we are managing risk. And we've got to a stage now where all our board reports are upfront about risk, the risk to the board, the mitigations of risk, and the non-execs, particularly on the board, have been very focused on assessing that and looking at what this means for the board itself. I think to pick up a question that you asked previously as well, you know, the board non-exec on the board are making a huge difference in the questions they ask and the outcomes they get. A big key aspect is around the financial savings. You've heard the huge amount of financial savings that NHS Grampian has been making and delivering over a number of years now. Now, obviously, that all comes with considerations to quality and safety has been asked already, and the board members themselves are the ones that really picked up on the need for an integrated quality assessment process to make sure we understand the impact of all the savings being made and make sure we are moving forward in the right direction. So that was to answer your question about scrutiny they've given and questions they've asked. I think as well, I would also talk about the quality of information coming to the board as well. There's been a lot of consideration by board members about the quality of information. Are we getting the right information to do the right scrutiny that we need to do? The conclusion to that has been that maybe we're not seeing it in the right form. We need to have it in a different form. We maybe don't need to look at RAG statuses, for example, the red, amber, green, looking at things totally. What we need to understand is trends over a period of time and actually beginning to have that crow's foot element on our board papers as well. So we can think about trajectories, we can think about levels of tolerance within the crow's foot, where we are in terms of the overall target we're trying to make. And I think the scrutiny on thinking about trajectories, on things about moving forward, rather than being focused on the one-off, actually has been really supportive of the work we do in order to understand things going forward as well. I would also add that what's been the focus of my work and encouraging the board members as well is to think about the triangulation of different sources of evidence, of information coming to the board as well, that we have that data coming to us, that quantitative data coming to us in board reports, but what else do we need to actually understand, to get under the feet and under the skin of what's actually happening in NHS Grampian at the moment. So visibility of board members themselves, going on visits, getting to know staff, getting to know the organisation, seeing things as they are happening across the organisation has been a really important part of our work. And we have a programme of visits that are linked to the committee work of the board now as well. And anyone who goes on a visit reports back on what they've seen, what they've learned, what the outcomes of that is to support that work on triangulation as well. And we're also, as part of that, listening to the staff voice and making sure we have the staff voice as part of what we're doing as well. In particular, at board meetings, I've pushed up the agenda, the reports from the Area Partnership Forum and the Area Clinical Forum, so we have insights and reports back and invite their leaders, the people leading those organisations, those groups within NHS Grampian, to actually talk and highlight any issues that come by staff as well. So that sense of being able to triangulate evidence as well, to actually scrutinise in detail the information that's coming to our board, together with looking at the skills that we have on the board itself, I think is really, and appreciating risk and what that means for us as well, I think is really helping us move forward. It's a journey we're on. It's a journey we are embracing and continuing to work on as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Just probably something I just want to add from an Ayrshire perspective, and I think it was a point that Alison raised, was what's been really important is the staff and patient voice. So at the start of our board meeting, we always have a staff or patient story. So, as an example, a really positive story about robotics and the robotic use within Ayrshire and the outcomes for patients, and same day operation, then obviously same day home, which is positive. But we also have some challenging patient stories that come to the board as well, that actually offers challenge to non-execs, but to execs as well. But I just wanted to reiterate that we put staff and patients at the heart and at the top of our board meeting.
And if I may just add to that, actually, the request, we actually, non-execs, asked to have improvement stories coming to board, not all just good news stories, but we really wanted to be in public sharing the ones that actually are learning stories for us as an organisation. And I think that's really important, that we don't just look at the good news, but we look at where we need to improve.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm conscious that we're 3 minutes away from our allocated time slot expiring, and we've still got 2 members of the committee to ask questions. So if we can try and keep some of the answers succinct, and the questions will be succinct, I know. I'm going to invite the Deputy Convener, Jamie Green, to put some of those questions to you.
Thank you. I'll try my best. In the last session with the Auditor General, we talked about the long-term financial sustainability of your boards. I would like, unsurprisingly, to focus on NHS Ayrshire and Arran due to my regional interest and nearly 10 years' experience of working with patients from that area. But there is clearly an issue with your financial sustainability. The Auditor General, when I asked him about this last time, said that, I'll paraphrase, I hope he doesn't mind, but we are in a recurring pattern or cycle of brokerage and funding from the government that is not a sustainable position with regard to service delivery or quality for the patients of NHS Ayrshire and Arran. And it's that quality bit that I want to focus on. What effect does this financial unsustainability have on the quality of service for patients?
I'll maybe start, and I can ask Crawford to come in, obviously, from a clinical point of view. But what I would say, and a bit like I've just said at the board, is patient safety and patient quality is absolutely paramount. We have got a Healthcare Governance Committee. We get regular updates, both from an exec and non-exec point of view. We use trending, we use funnel plots, etc., and we benchmark ourselves against our other boards across Scotland. So quality is absolutely the heart of what we do, and any transformation that we do, we will ensure that that is front and centre, and it is exactly at the centre of the 9 priorities that I've set out for the organisation. So we are not, we are continuing to ensure that patient quality is at the centre. As part of that, so we are in this financial position. Scottish Government have set, as you know, trajectories for patients waiting in planned care, no patients waiting over 52 weeks, and we have seen significant progress, and I should thank all the team within Ayrshire and Arran in doing so. The numbers of patients waiting over 52 weeks is radically reduced. So that's an example whereby we are modernising our processes. We're ensuring grip and control. We're being more productive in the elements we've got. We have been supported by some additional funding from government round about planned care. But actually, we're forecasting at this moment in time, certainly from an outpatient point of view, to have 0 patients on most specialties in inpatient day case and outpatients by the end of March. So we will be there or thereabouts in terms of that 52-week target. So 19 out of the 24 specialties for outpatients and 12 out of the 16 specialties for inpatient day case. So I think that's an example whereby when we're absolutely focused, when we start to pivot the system and change, we can deliver on our financial savings. As I said, we're going to be ahead of our own budget target, but also deliver on patient quality. But I don't know if Crawford would like to add something.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Convener. We use a multi-layered approach to this. You know, we use big data, hospital mortality ratio. You would start probably there. We use our committees in terms of ensuring that quality. We're visible as a leadership team. We walk around for 2 hours every week. We allow access to the wards and the services for the non-execs through our extensive quality and safety walk-around programme. Comes back to Mr Beattie's point around about showing the shop floor to the board. So we're reassured we're making some progress, as my colleague has said, in terms of planned care. Activity in terms of unscheduled care is difficult just now, and there's no shying away from that. We were faced with an overcrowded system that's running at high occupancy. We've been trying to reform the system since 2006-07 when we did our service review, and it was around about being more bespoke in terms of what was done in what hospitals. The PwC report from 2017 said that we were not financially viable beyond 2022 unless we reformed. So Caring for Ayrshire was born under that auspice, and you'll be familiar, Deputy Convener, about that kind of care closer to home, wrapping around the family, the community, and the community services. It's a much cheaper model. It's a higher quality model. If you take away the pandemic, you know, that report predicted that we would be non-financially sustainable and we would have a deficit of 130 million by 2022. So if you take the pandemic away, that's almost really on point. So we need to go on with the reform. Socioeconomic inequity, as you well know, Deputy Convener, drives poor health outcomes, and that drives activity. So we're in that cycle just now. So we want to reform, you know, over the next 3 years, and that 3-year clinical strategy that we can provide writing to the committee in interest of time sits along beside that 3 to 5 year path to financial balance. We have the backing of the clinical community, which perhaps in 2006, 2007 it wasn't as strong for reform, but we have that backing now. And we're, although this is about audit in the past, we're looking forward in terms of greater financial stability and a new paradigm for providing services.
I am going to need slightly shorter answers. Sorry, I appreciate it. And I know you want to give comprehensive answers, and I do appreciate it. But I do want to cover as much ground as I can whilst I've got you here today. Can I look at some of those unplanned targets? The information I have is from March 2025, so it's nearly a year out of date. The targets are high. We know that, particularly around A&E and outpatient care. But can you give me an update? Do you have statistics with you today? What are the latest statistics? And I can give you 3 specific metrics I'd like data for. Your A&E 4-hour standard is the first one. Your 12-week outpatient standard and your 62-day cancer standard. The convener mentioned the latter in his line of questioning. Because the statistics I have from last year are really poor. Really poor.
Sorry, I'm just looking.
No, I appreciate you might need a second.
I do have some of the numbers. So, in terms of our 4-hour standard, our 4-hour standard at January 25 was, so this is local management information. So, I'm conscious it's not PHS published information on that basis. So, it's still subject to stats governance and everything that goes with that, and so subject to change. So, our local management data for the 4-hour target at the end of January, clearly in the winter period, it was 60.6%. Our 12-week first outpatient was 54%. What I would say, however, is that we have, as I've mentioned, a lot of focus on the target of patients waiting over 52 weeks, and we have seen significant progress in that, and happy to supply more information on that as required. And I won't repeat what I've said previously. And sorry, the last target you said was
62-day cancer.
So in terms of cancer, as you know, there's 2 targets. I'll just give you both. The last PHS published data for cancer was September, which was 79.7, so it's 80%. And we were at 98.6% on the 31-day target. In terms of management information, November and December have been 100% on the 31-day target. December, I don't have the exact number, but it was above 80% in December. We have made significant progress in our cancer target over the last year, and the January number did dip to low 70s. However, our expectation is that will further improve as we move into the year. So we have done a lot of clinical pathway redesign in our cancer process. So that's looking at, when we get tests, how do we align with MRI scans, etc. So I believe we're making significant positive progress on our cancer, on our weights, but recognise the fact that we need to do more on our 4-hour target.
Yeah, I mean, last year it was 67%, January this year 60%, 12-week outpatient last year was 61%, that's dropped significantly to 54%. So that's basically half the amount. I mean, the target's 95. We're not a couple of percentage points away here, we're way off. And I'm not trying to trick you here or catch you out, but, this is a health board which is facing serious financial difficulties year on year for nearly a decade now, still not meeting a number of major targets. My case load is absolutely chock-a-block with people who are at their wits' end waiting for treatment. And it's difficult to see what the end of the tunnel looks like. Is it the problem here that simply because of, for many reasons you've given already around the demographics, the deprivation levels, the areas that you cover, particularly in North Ayrshire and other parts of the two other Ayrshire's, that without more cash and more people, you're just never, ever going to be able to hit these targets. You're trying to make the books meet to make your audit rather than ask for more money from government to deliver the services that you need to. Isn't that the case?
I don't think that is the case. I think so. The Scottish average for the 12-week target in December was 60%. So
yeah, it's just as bad.
So we're in if you like, we're in the middle of the pack of the Scottish average, which we need to improve, and we are committed to improving. I think, as I've said, we have seen significant progress in long waits. In fact, we are ahead of a trajectory in long waits across Scotland. Our cancer performance is improving. Not where we want it to be. Well, it's above where we want it to be. In fact, it's 100% for 31 days, but not where we wanted it to be for 62 days. But again, on a trajectory of improving over multiple months, over the last 6 months of the year. I think the new sub-national planning and delivery brings a further opportunity for us on the west of Scotland. So actually, where can we then, if we're planning and delivering on a sub-national basis, then actually how can we use the collective skills and expertise of the whole system to then improve the waiting times specifically for patients and elective care. So I think that offers us a good opportunity. We've got examples just now, with NHS Golden Jubilee, where we use the National Treatment Centre and patients from Ayrshire and Arran travel there, as they do from other boards as well. And some of the areas we are focusing on that sub-national, and I'm chairing one of them myself, is we're looking at our orthopaedics plan for the west of Scotland, linking into the orthopaedics plan in the east of Scotland, and then how that comes together. I think that will bring new opportunity, and I think that the key focus of that is to then get back to ultimately the 12-week TTG treatment guarantee over a period of a number of years.
And that sounds very positive, and that's helpful updates. But I guess maybe I'll rephrase my earlier question, and that's, when you're talking to Ms Lamb or the Director General for Health and the government, essentially, ministers, I mean, the whole conversation this morning has been about saving money, which essentially means in some areas making cuts. Given the uniqueness of your demographic and the rise in demand, which is completely outside of your control, I understand that. You're having to service and cover an area of deep deprivation in Scotland with some of the lowest life expectancies, the lowest health life expectancies, and I said the top 3 decile in poverty in Scotland. So I have a lot of sympathy for the situation you find yourself in. But why is the Chief Executive and the Chair of NHS Ayrshire and Arran not saying to the government, if you want us to deliver good quality, cost-effective, fast public health services to our communities, we simply need more money. And I haven't heard that once in today's conversation. Because if it was me, I'd be knocking at the door saying, if you want us to meet your targets, we need more cash.
So I think there is an element of funding and how funding is allocated across Scotland. So there is an element of that. We have the NRAC formula, as I'm sure you'll be aware. We do have our population in Ayrshire is reducing. NRAC's key denominator is population-based. It's then adjusted for, ultimately, factors for deprivation, etc. Currently NHS Ayrshire and Ireland is sitting at 0.6 below our NRAC share. So we get an element of adjustment for that. We also have, as well as the areas you've outlined, we have obviously our islands as well. And we do know that serving healthcare in islands is more expensive than it is on the mainland. So we are working with government. I guess the question is for government in terms of how that funding model is allocated. That's a question for government and not for ourselves. But we do welcome the support they have given us in terms of the deficit support funding and sustainability funding they've given us. But I also think, as well as additional funds, there are certainly things we can do within our own system and on a West of Scotland and national basis to further improve our outturn.
Yeah, I know that Scotland reflected on that. They noted that it's not just about cost-cutting and making efficiencies, as they identified. They believed that reform of services had been slow in the board itself. We are tight in time, but I think staffing is another issue that I did want to briefly cover, and I am aware that there's quite a higher than average workforce sickness rate. I've also been working quite closely with local union members who've done many surveys of their staffing, and I'm afraid to say that the results of those surveys have been disappointing and slightly worrying, particularly those who were surveyed who believe that they are so short-staffed that they're putting the safety of their patients at risk. I believe the figure was 78%, it's substantially high. Many more reported an uncomfortableness and raising concerns with leadership and management. A very high percentage said they didn't receive appropriate or timely feedback to their concerns, and 90% said that safe staffing legislation made absolutely no difference to their day-to-day level of care. These are very worrying pieces of feedback. What are you doing to improve staff morale, staff safety, and the welfare of staff, given the sickness rate is so high?
So, NHS Ayrshire and Ireland sickness rate isn't where we want it to be. That said, we sit on a Scotland basis, third or fourth in terms of having the best sickness rate, but we still need to improve. Let me be very clear on that. So actually, if I look across other boards on that benchmarking comparison, we are in the upper quartile in terms of sickness absence. So I take that as some element of positivity. In terms of what we're doing, I think it starts with myself in terms of visible leadership. And I think in the first week I was out and about, I have been across multiple services. I go on weekly walks with both the chair, medical director and nurse director. We are very open and transparent with staff. Cultures and values are really important to me. I actively say at those meetings with all members of staff, if you've got an issue, then please raise it. You can always come to my door if you want as well, if it is not coming through the line manager. So what I am doing that, what I am trying to convey and get across to staff is that, you know, is a safe working place, the ability to raise concerns. And I believe that we can do that within NHS Ayrshire and Arran. We do monitor ourselves against the safe staffing standards. And our last report that we got is reasonable assurance, which is one of the categories within that. That goes through our board governance structure, through healthcare governance, and then into the board, so it is actively monitored. In terms of staff wellbeing, we actually had a paper this week at our management team, last week at our management team. We are looking at further options around about staff wellbeing resource. because we know that actually there's a potential invest to save within staff wellbeing if we can then reduce and obviously have staff back at work. But we have, over the last few years, significantly invested in staff wellbeing. We've created three staff wellbeing hubs at our main sites, and that is an area for, where staff can go in a calm space. They also have opportunity to access, obviously, support via our OD department, our organisational development and staff support and safe care. So we have these processes in place. I don't know if Leslie or Crawford would like to add anything.
Yeah, so the figures I saw, Deputy Convener, were the Unison survey was 80% felt that we weren't doing enough to align with the health and care staffing legislation. 32% said that they had some concerns around about patient safety in terms of staffing levels, and a significant minority said that they felt they weren't being heard. Just to add to what Chief Executive has said, we have wellbeing services that I consider to be the best in class in Scotland in terms of we built up during the pandemic. It was built on a model of peer support and team debrief, etc. We can give you further information on that if that's helpful. We've got a really vibrant APF, and we take all that stuff through the APF. It would be wrong of us to leave without saying that the current unscheduled care system is really overloaded, and that's a very difficult place for staff to work, and we're targeting some of that resource in there. Activity costs money, and sometimes it can cost quality. We've got amazing teams in there, but we're sighted on that. As we're out and about and we see that. I work on the Thursday morning in A&E, so I see it for myself. It's a useful kind of lightning rod for myself, and it is very difficult. The whole system is overheated just now, and we have, in excess of 150 people that are fit to leave the hospital, but we don't have any funding in social care to drive that through. So it's very difficult, and it would be wrong to leave this committee without update. Thank you.
Your frankness on that, and we've rehearsed issues around delayed discharge and the knock-on effect that has on your ability to offer services at the front end. So we are hugely sympathetic to those and raise those with government. One final technical question is a brief one, and that's how many GP practices is the board currently still funding through sustainability payments? Because I'm aware that there have been issues around primary care and GP practices either closing or looking to hand back their licence or convert to 2C practices. And I know that comes at a cost to you when those effectively private operators come out of the system.
So I don't have the answer, but I'm happy to write to the committee and give you an update on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Right, thanks very much for that. I'm finally now going to turn to Joe Fitzpatrick, who's been waiting very patiently to put his questions to you. Joe.
Thanks very much. And some of the areas I think have been covered, and I might focus more on Grampian, given Jamie focused more on yourselves there. First of all, just for transparency, I have a number of family members who work in the front line in NHS Grampian. I don't think there's anything declarable, but just to be transparent about that. Obviously, Grampian went into level 4 May 25, and one of the first things that came from that was the KPMG work that the government initiated, and it was quite a rapid turnaround in that, a couple of months. So I guess it would be good just to hear, and actually just before you came into post really was when that was published, so maybe that was actually quite a useful document for you to be able to start with. So I guess just to hear what the experience of that and how you're working through their recommendations.
Perhaps if I can start. So firstly, we really welcomed the KPMG external diagnostic report, and I think a few things in terms of what I think we've got out of it, because that's what it was all about. Firstly, it explored the causes of the deficit. Now, the board had done a lot of work on that already, but I think it gave us an even deeper understanding as a board around that. I think the second aspect was around looking at the potential for wider savings opportunities. So we'd already done a lot of work developing our savings programme, but this put more options on the table for us to work through, which of course we've done, and we've either included them in the savings programme or excluded those and been very clear why we've chosen to do that if so. And then the third strand was around leadership and governance and opportunities there to really strengthen those domains further. A few things in terms of, I guess, learning points that we've absolutely picked up and taken forward, and then we'll describe the improvement plan, because actually one of the outputs of the whole diagnostic review was to develop a single improvement plan, which came to our board in December, and that's what is overseen by our own board in a very formal way, as you would imagine, in public, but also by the Scottish Government-chaired Assurance Board. So I think top of the list, and this sounds like a really basic and simple thing, but going back to the external review report, it was asking us to declutter the landscape and basically, instead of having hundreds of priorities, strip it back. And that's why we've got 3 top organisational priorities, which we have not deviated from. And I think that's really served us well in terms of that forensic focus on those priorities. And in 2 of those, of course, apologies, value and sustainability, i.e. finance, planned care, so reducing our longest waiters, and unscheduled care. And as described earlier, in 2 of those 3 domains, planned care and finance, we can evidence real progress. That's because we've stripped it back and held our nerve as an organisation to just really keep things simple. I think the second aspect in terms of learning and taking forward from the diagnostic review, I touched on it a little earlier, strengthened financial reporting throughout the organisation, including at board level, but also strengthened IJB reporting and visibility of financial results and scrutiny of IJB finances, including my own personal involvement in that in terms of how I hold the chief officers to account, and there are very formal ways in which we do that. Identifying opportunities to further improve operational governance in the organisation. So I've just taken a paper through my own exec team and onwards to the Assurance Board, so there's work underway there. But I think really fundamentally what it reinforced to me was that we were already doing many of the right things. So it actually gave us confidence and heart that we were on the right lines, but actually just enhanced that further. As I said, we have a detailed improvement plan. That is one of the outputs of that external review. There are in excess of 90 recommendations. Those recommendations are part of one single improvement plan, which has oversight by our board and the Assurance Board. But fundamentally, under those priorities, I've described 3. The 4th is culture. There are programme boards for finance, planned care, unscheduled care and culture, and all of those recommendations are overseen by those 4 programme boards and ultimately report up to the board. And probably the final thing before I ask our board chair if she has anything to add is where we are proposing we close those recommendations, and we have very clear way of evidencing that we've done the recommendation and recommending to the board we close that off. There's a very formal way in which we do that, so it has closure and the board formally close off those recommendations. And indeed we took the latest improvement plan with some closures to our board last week, but please know there's a very robust process behind the governance of the improvement plan.
Yeah, thank you. Laura said a lot of things I was going to say there, so I will be brief. I think the external review itself was really reassuring because it built on things that we'd already identified ourselves. We'd already been doing lots of planning ourselves. It took them further, and the way it's structured, it gave us the opportunity to take it forward in the improvement plan that we've done as well. The important learning point from the board was that we were maybe looking at too many things, and we had to really hone that down into what we were doing in terms of improvement from where we are now, but also the sustainability piece as well, making sure that improvement is lasting, and we're building an NHS Grampian that's sustainable going into the future as well. I think that's a key aspect. I was going to touch on the board reporting. Laura's done that. The bit I would add to what Laura said was these improvement plan actions go first through committee, and there's really thorough scrutiny at committee first, and then the committee that they've been at gives that recommendation to the board about whether they should be closed off or not. And I think that is an important place for things to be looked at in real detail, that getting under cover of what's been presented as something to be closed off as well. So that's the one bit I'd add. Thank you.
One last thing, Alison, and obviously we've worked together on a number of things, so I know that the question area I'm going to ask around it is probably areas that you care about. It's transparency, and you're making those decisions. Can the public see what those decisions are? Are you publishing all of that?
Yes, and we are. Transparency is absolutely key, as you might imagine, having worked with me in the past. Transparency is really important to us. we have actually had more people attending online our public board meetings as well to hear at that point, and obviously very keen to do media work after that to let people know what was decided. And just from last week, actually, we had that media work done by a widened members of the executive team, so that more people are standing out and more people are giving that transparent approach as well. After every board meeting, I write a detailed briefing of what happened at the board meeting, at the board itself, what decisions were made to give that transparency as well. That's shared with all staff. I think it's really important that we have all staff working with us. We are working with all staff, they are working with us. So my board report goes to tell all staff what was said at the board, but that's also shared with the 3 local councils as well, so they have that transparency about what was discussed as well. Now, it's really important that these decisions are made, that what we are doing is transparent. Obviously, we're looking at things that involve savings, and we need to give assurance that quality and safety of our staff, of the patients, is really forefront within that work as well. So we do need to be transparent, and we are always willing for more ways to be presented to us about how we can be more transparent.
That's really helpful, thanks. One last thing for yourselves. Obviously, in terms of making our public services more efficient, one of the things that government are really keen is that we're working together across the public service. Are we looking at being able to share more of the back office work, salaries, etc., between the public service in the area, you know, the 2 local authorities and yourselves? Are we working on that to get better at that?
But I think the new North East Transformation Group that I will be chairing moving forward, that's exactly the type of space we need to get into. We've already got, as we look to 26-27, a long list of 8 areas that we want to look at for the year ahead. But that's the space where we'll be having those discussions moving forward.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Just a couple of questions for yourselves to kind of follow on from that. Obviously, you're a little bit behind Aberdeen and Grampian, in terms of the level 4. What are you hoping to get from that? Is it something similar to what Grampian have experienced?
I think it's a similar, absolutely a similar approach to what Grampian's experiencing, and it's certainly based on my initial conversations I've had from Scottish Government officials. I think that's a similar approach that we're taking. Clearly, different levels of escalation, etc., and different themes. However, I think overarching, it's going to be a similar approach, yes.
Okay.
And from my perspective, I think, you know, I'm going into it very open-minded. I've had a brief conversation with Alison. We're going to follow up some more so that I can understand the experience that Grampian's had. But my understanding to date is that it has become a positive experience, and I would hope that it will be the same for us in NHS Ayrshire.
And I guess the hope is then that patients at the end see the benefit of that. Obviously, a little bit more complex in terms of the landscape, in terms of working across public service, more local authorities for a start. How are you managing? Are you managing to pull that together in terms of saving on, particularly in that the back office work stuff?
So I think back office, you can look 2 ways. You can either look through health, or you can look across the public sector.
Yeah.
And I think, in fairness, we're looking both ways. So I think in terms of the new subnational planning, that is something that we'll get into. And actually, across NHS in Scotland, we've launched a business systems programme, and that's looking at a new single national system, looking at bringing together HR, payroll, procurement and finance as a single consolidated system across Scotland. So that will bring opportunity for not just us, but all health boards across Scotland, both in terms of how we deliver those services and how we can be more efficient with new digital technology in that space, in that kind of self-service space within that for users as well. From a local authority point of view, I meet regularly with the 3 chief execs of the council, and similar to Grampian, we've had 1 meeting of our transformation board, the kind of first formal meetings tomorrow, where we're going to agree the terms of reference. And I laid out earlier the areas of focus. One of those areas of focus will be looking at potential options for shared services. So again, at a local basis, that could be something like transport. And also within Ayrshire, even though we have 3 local authorities and 3 integrated joint boards, within our integrated joint boards, we have certain ones that take almost a lead agency approach. So, for example, East Ayrshire is the lead for primary care, South Ayrshire is the lead for equipment stores. So again, we're going to look at models to see, is there another can we expand that model that is working? North is lead for mental health services. Is there a way we can expand that model as we move forward and almost have a lead IJB for services? So again, that's building on your comment around the shared service.
Okay. And one final question then for yourself. One of the criticisms of the external audit was the lack of, sorry, the whole system plan didn't sufficiently demonstrate what you were doing in terms of improvement. So are you developing an improvement plan similar to what Grampian have?
So we've actually got a copy, Grampian have shared, we've got a copy of their savings plan. I think I'll have a different flavour to it, clearly a different system, different population demographic. However, we are following a similar approach. And in terms of transformation, there's three main areas we're focusing on, underlying the principles of right care, right place. So again, that moving from acute to community where appropriate. But in terms of short term, we're looking at our surgical models. We're looking at our acute medicine models as well, and what does that look like, and our emergency care models. And then we're looking at how can we, within that, transfer care potentially from the acute service into community services as well. Because we know there is a cost differential. We know the cost of a bed versus the cost of a care at home or a cost of a care home. There's a significant differential. So some of that may mean that some of our budget transfers, but in doing so we need to reduce. We're in a position where we need to reduce our cost, our bed base within Ayrshire. We have too many beds that are currently open and are causing us a cost pressure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Just one final question from me out of curiosity. Did you share that improvement plan this morning when you arrived in Parliament? Did you share it whilst you were discussing giving evidence to this session, or was it something that you would always have done anyway?
No, I think we got the Ayrshire, the NHS Grampian, so the KPMG report almost as soon as it was published, if I'm being honest. So we've had that for a long while. We do share information with each other. We also share information with other boards. I gave an evidence that from a financial reporting point of view, and that been very concise in the reporting. We've taken a lot of sharing from NHS Lanarkshire, and NHS Lanarkshire have supported in that. Likewise, we obviously share where we have got areas, and we do have areas of excellence practice. We share that with other boards as well.
And just building on that, if I may, because there's a huge amount of work going on across Scotland to reduce unwarranted variation, because there's huge differences in performance, access, outcomes across Scotland. So from an unscheduled care perspective, we've learnt a lot from Lothian because they're further ahead than us. They're offering us some buddy and peer support. Similarly, we asked for an external review around planned care to say, have we looked at absolutely everything? So I think learning from one another is just part and parcel of how we do things now in the Chief Exec community across Scotland.
Good, thank you. I'm afraid I can't bring you back in, Mr James. I'm sorry, I'm applying my ABC of Chairmanship Walter Citrine rules. You can only come in once. So I want to thank you, though, very much for sharing your experience and giving us evidence this morning to help illuminate our picture of where you stand, where things are in the wake of those two Section 22 reports. So we very much appreciate your time this morning. So can I formally thank you, Alex Stephen, Alison Everson and Laura Scaife-Knight, NHS Grampian, and Gordon James, Leslie Bowie and Crawford McGuffey from NHS Ayrshire and Arran. We very much appreciate your time this morning. I am now going to suspend the meeting to allow for a change of witnesses. Thank you very much. morning. Yeah. Good morning. Can I welcome everyone back to this meeting of the Scottish Parliament Public Audit Committee. We've got the next item on our agenda is consideration of the Scottish Government's approach to financial interventions, with particular reference to the GFG Alliance arrangement at the Lochaber aluminium smelter. And I'm very pleased to welcome two witnesses from the company this morning. Geoffrey Cable, who's the Chief Transformation Officer from the Liberty Steel Group, and alongside Mr Cable is Helen Lambert, who is the Senior Legal Counsel at the GFG Alliance. You're both very welcome and thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. We've got some questions that we'd like to put to you, but before we get to our questions, I wonder, Mr Cable, whether you would like to make a short opening statement.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr Leonard. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for inviting me to discuss GFG Alliance's businesses in Scotland. My name is Geoffrey Cable. I am Chief Transformation Officer of GFG Alliance and a member of the Board of Directors of Liberty Steel Group, which is the ultimate holding company of all the global businesses. I have oversight of all the UK businesses and direct management over the Lochaber businesses and lands in Fort William. And I'm supported here today by Tom Uppington, who's the Managing Director at Advanced British Aluminium and Cymec Power, who is here with me today, and Rory MacDonald, who's Head of Estate Strategy Development at Jahama Highland Estates. He couldn't make it today, unfortunately. And he manages the 140,000 acres of Highland Estates that surround the business, the smelting businesses. I also work closely with Gordon McRae, Operations Manager, Liberty Steel DL, who is also here today, and also Helen Lambert, as you introduced her earlier. I would like to please start highlighting GFG Alliance's contribution in Scotland over the past 10 years. The business context in the UK and for GFG has been challenging for a number of reasons. I don't need to emphasise the impact of Brexit and COVID nationally and globally, but as well for GFG, the well-known, well-covered collapse of our main finance provider, Greensill Capital, in early 2021. This is when I came on. I was brought onto the board just after the Greensill collapse in May 2021. Despite these challenges, since 2016, GFG has provided tens of millions of pounds of funding into the Scottish businesses, both in capital investment and operational and salary support. We remain fully committed to operating and developing our Scottish aluminium, steel, and hydropower assets. When I joined the business, one of my key priorities was to ensure the smelter, hydro, and estates fulfilled their potential as a unique integrated asset for sustainable manufacturing. Actually, on a recent visit by Sky News, and they referred to and reported on the combined operations, what they thought to be the largest factory in the world. Our goal has been to optimize the water catchment collection areas of the estates, annualize reservoir hydrology levels, aluminum and electricity production levels. The split is determined by prevailing global London Metals Exchange aluminum and UK power prices, coupled with national grid balancing mechanism requests. We got connected to the grid about 3 years ago, so we provide balancing mechanism to the grid when there's issues around wind and other types of things. We have made significant progress in developing the assets, more importantly, the joint teams to collaborate. This remains our core global competitive advantage. I pulled the whole group together. The states were run separately and I pulled all into one operation. To that end, we will very shortly be providing to the Scottish Government for discussion a proposal for substantial investment in an expansion project to complement and further enhance the national strategic value of the smelter. Jahama Estates, which surround the smelter, are a huge part of our business in the Highlands and the local community. We're making significant headway to support the estate's growth, encompassing community and conservation support via commercial, recreation, and tourism investments. The value we're bringing has been recognised by the £2.3 million grant recently awarded to us by Scottish Forestry to carry out one of the largest woodland recovery projects ever undertaken in the UK. We have a very constructive relationship with Scottish Government. We provide regular reporting and updates to them to ensure full transparency, and our vision for sustainable manufacturing complements Scotland's wider industrial agenda. That working relationship is very strong. It is something I personally am heavily involved in. Probably 40% of my time globally spent on the Scottish businesses. And in very much value, we're committed to partnering with Scotland to promote the Lochaber community and Scottish industry. I want to reinforce that no public funds have been spent under the Loch Harbour Guarantee. The Scottish Government continues to earn the expected income in the form of guarantee fee payments from GFG Alliance. And I'd just like to mention that our DL plant in Motherwell paused production August 24 due to poor market conditions, with the staff being placed on furlough arrangement that was agreed with the unions. That important step by GFG allowed staff to be retained and put the business in a strong position of recommencing operations. GFG Alliance has plans to recommence operations at DL to supply plate for naval warship building. It has been awarded a large contract by Navantia, with the opportunity to bid for more work in the near future. It is worth noting in excess of £20 million of funding has been provided to DL to ensure employees can be retained and paid throughout the period. And finally, I just wanted to say, even though I've been a citizen for 17 years and living in the UK for 23 years, I still can't pronounce aluminum the way you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cable. Can I just, as we open, try to establish what the structure of ownership of the site in Loch Harbour is? Because, as I understand it, the Cymec Group, which owns the hydropower stations at Kinlochleven and Fort William, is owned by PK Gupta, headquartered Hong Kong. And Liberty Aluminium Loch Harbour Limited, which owns the smelter, is owned by Sanjeev Gupta, company headquartered Singapore. And then also in the mix, I've got Alvance British Aluminium. Could you perhaps illuminate for me what the relationships between those different subsidiaries
I might defer
is?
to Helen on this, but they're all ultimately owned by the same owner. But due to the structure of the businesses when it was acquired, that's the way it was put into those different buckets. But assure me, they all run as one business.
Okay, so one owner and one director, or is there a board of directors?
There's one overall director of all the businesses. And then there's a sub-governing board underneath.
And that's Sanjeev Gupta, presumably?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Thank you. You mentioned, and I'll get straight to this, because you mentioned, Mr. Cable, about full transparency being important to you. I'm bound to ask, and you'll have seen that we've raised this on a number of occasions, why you don't have any auditors and why you have not lodged audited accounts. We are the Public Audit Committee, you understand.
So again, this is something I took on when I came in. I was made a director of several of the companies, but not all the companies. So I'm party to the other directors on discussions with Companies House. We've engaged with Companies House from the get-go on all of our businesses. That is progressing to some level. We hopefully will come to some arrangement. But in the meantime, we have obtained auditors for the Loch Harbour smelter, for Hydro, and for DL, and are completing the audits there. DL is a bit further behind than Loch Harbour and, than Alvance and Cymec, but there are auditors in place right now.
So when was the last time you lodged audited accounts with Companies House?
I believe it was 2020? 2019, 2020.
Okay, so that's...
it's a while.
It's a long time.
Yes.
And am I correct in thinking that you are the subject of prosecution by Companies House?
Yes, we are.
For failing to lodge
yes.
audited accounts?
The management accounts have always been completed for all of the accounts. Now, the reason that we had some auditors, as you probably read about, that walked away.
King
in the
King.
UK. Yep, they walked away. So it was very difficult. So what I've done over the last couple of years I've been involved is canvassing regularly to get auditors in. And as I said, I think of the operating companies we have now, half of them are already being audited. But as Helen said, we've had to go back to 2020. Now, why they weren't done in between, I can't say. It's before my time. But my goal is to get all the audits done as quickly as possible and get them submitted when we can. We actually tried to submit the accounts, and Companies House rejected that. And they're well aware of my efforts to try and get auditors. But the path is on a good position, I would say, right now.
So, sorry, when did you try to submit accounts and they were rejected?
I believe it was...
Which year's accounts was that for?
It was 2020, and I believe it was in August, September 2021.
Okay.
And then after that, in fact, they actually posted Alvance's accounts online, and they realized it was a mistake. You probably read about that, and pulled it off. So yes, we've offered to provide those all along.
But again, as I understand it, the reason why King and King resigned was because, as auditors, was because they wanted to put a qualification on the accounts, and Mr Gupta refused to accept a qualification on the accounts, and they walked.
I wasn't here when that happened, but I believe that there was a disagreement on that qualification, yes.
And why is it taking you 5 years and you still don't have auditors in place?
Number one, because of that issue. Number two, because of Greensill. And number three, because of the SFO investigation. There's very little audit capacity out there, quite frankly. So there's only 4 big audit firms, and they've all been fined immensely over the last how many years. So taking on a new large conglomerate is very difficult. So what I did is I went to each operating company. We got close on a few, but because of those 3 issues, it was almost impossible, and that's all documented, me emailing, speaking with people to try and get them in. But those are the 3 principal issues why. Again, the accounts are done, but getting them audited is obviously taking a bit longer because we have to go back, as you say, sometimes 4 years to get that done.
Yeah. And you have an internal audit function, though?
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay.
So as I said, the accounts are done internally, but getting them out and audited has been a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. You raised the Serious Fraud Office investigation, which again goes back, I think, to the 14th of May 2021. So that's a long-standing investigation. And again, my reading of it is that the SFO usually will only investigate what I think it describes on its own website as the most serious or complex cases of fraud, bribery or corruption. Is that what they're investigating here?
I can't comment on the investigation. I can say that I am the correspondent because I was not here when these what they're looking at, which I can't say what they're looking at because the investigation I would say has ebbed and flowed. It goes dramatically fast and then it slows down and then it goes dramatically fast. So there is quite a bit of engagement and it's very positive. And I think both sides want to see a resolution one way or another. But unfortunately, it has taken this long. We fully complied with everything that they've asked for and continue to.
But it is a matter of public record, isn't it, Mr Cable, that the headings of investigation they have are serious fraud, fraudulent trading and money laundering?
Yes.
And is that just in relation to Greensill Capital, or is that and the relationship with the GFG Alliance?
We don't exactly know. We just are at the end of Section 2 letters requesting information. So.
Okay, so again, you don't know what the charges are or what the suspicions are because they are at the level of suspicion and investigation.
We could always postulate, but no, well, we don't. Sometimes when you think we do, they go in another direction. So all I know is we were fully engaged, and you're sitting with the person who's actually the one that received the letters and works with all of my internal teams and lawyers to make sure that they receive the information.
Okay, and so you're the correspondent.
I mean, the correspondent.
So where does Mr. Sanjeev Gupta sit in this then?
Well, because he's the party, but they need someone to correspond with who was outside the system, which was me at the time. So, and as I'm on the board now, and I do have coverage of the UK where this is covered and what they're looking at. This is why it was decided that I would be the correspondent.
Okay, and just one final question from me before I bring in the Deputy Convener. And this may be historic, and it will be before your time, Mr Cable, and maybe Ms Lambert can help, I don't know. But when I looked at a document produced in 2016 looking at the business case for the arrangement between the Scottish Government and the GFG Alliance, one of the documents that was produced by EY, Ernst & Young, was about the borrowings that CIMEC at that time had. And they were $21.3 million due to BNN Bank Russia, $25 million due to International Bank of St. Petersburg, secured against receivables, and $34 million due to Greensill Capital Limited, which was an unsecured loan. I take it you no longer have financial relationships with Russian financial institutions?
Well, I can't comment on the past because I don't recognise that. Maybe I should, but no, we do not.
Okay, because you appreciate we're in a situation where there are financial sanctions, prohibitions, asset freezes, and so on. with Russian institutions.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. I mean, when the Russians invaded the Ukraine, because of the businesses that we're in, DBT did quite an exhaustive effort with both the smelter and with the steel. Where do we get our, iron ore? We don't buy iron ore. Where do we get our scrap from? Where do the raw materials come for the smelter? And so, I am clear that from that time, as you know, everything has to be above board and kosher. So we looked at everything, quite frankly, since my time when that happened, particularly with the Ukraine war.
Okay, so as far as that's concerned, you think you are above board and kosher?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to invite Jamie Green, the Deputy Convener, to put some questions to you. Jamie.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, Mr Cable and Mr Lambert. Let's just put all this into context. The Auditor General doesn't produce these reports just for the fun of it, usually when there are valid concerns or rationale for investigating these things. And I suppose we've always had a watching interest in what's the Scottish Government's interactions with your business. But given what's already been mentioned, the Serious Fraud Office investigation, which remains live over a number of years, given the issues that you're facing in your other site in Scotland, given some of the other insolvency and liquidation proceedings that other parts of the business are going under at the moment, including quite a substantial administration in Australia that required huge government support, given some of the international legal and regulatory investigations, one I read the other day in Romania, investigating embezzlement and fraud, given your failure to file accounts or appoint auditors in the UK. It's just a big, long catalogue of malgovernance and poor practices. Please tell me in which way GFG Alliance is a fit and proper business organisation to do business with in Scotland.
I guess I would say, going back to the original deal in 2016, and I would say subsequently after that, anyone that looked to acquire the Lock Harbour business would have shut down the smelter. It's uneconomic, quite frankly. Even though it has a hydropower, low energy prices, it's small, it's way away, and we came in and said, no, we would keep the smelter going, which we have. We've increased headcount by 40. We're now at 207. I know we've had a couple goes at different projects. I'm the one that killed the previous two because I thought they were too expensive. They didn't create enough jobs, quite frankly, and the markets were very commoditized. So the one that we're talking about shifting to, we've spoken with Scottish Government, broad brush strokes over the last couple of months. So the investments have been there. On top of that, we're still here after all those things that have happened. And a lot of that is because I continually speak with Scottish Government, our local MPs, UK Gov, the unions, and tell them the good, bad, and the ugly, hopefully before it happens. I don't see everything that comes. But at the end of the day, the two principal, I would say, disabling issues since I've been here has been, number one, the SFO. Well, first of all, Greensill. And number two, the SFO, which came in, as you said, a couple months after I came in. And those are being addressed. As far as the other assets around the world, I think there was the desire and thought that we could save assets that probably shouldn't have been saved, quite frankly. And everything was done to get those assets going. And I won't say that with all the assets. But some I think we're making a success at, and some we failed. And do I regret having a go at doing that? Some cases, yes. But the intention was to come in and save some of those assets. Even the assets in the UK, especially steel, we've injected £200 million in loss funding for the last 4 or 5 years because we had finally fixed that business. We're ready to refinance it with BlackRock. At the end of the day, our creditors voted against it. And now it's obviously sitting with the official receiver, which UK Gov is not happy about because we do have a good plan. So I'm not obfuscating, but yes, there's been a lot of issues popping up. And I can't comment on those because those are ongoing investigations. I know full well Australia because I'm on the board of InfraBuild. That's what I have to actually go to a bit later. And was just down there. And I would say that was one business we poured so much money into and had a plan to convert to clean electric arc furnaces. But the gas, which was going to be promised by the state, never arrived. There was no trade remedy authorities like we've got in the UK to keep out Chinese and Vietnam competition as far as our production of billet. And quite frankly, it was hampering our other businesses because we are probably the second largest producer of steel still, called Infrabuild, big construction business. So I'm not happy about it, quite frankly. The US, we had furloughed for about 6 months. That's now running full out. It's had some operational issues. Also been a big cash drain, but has very good margins. A lot of people told us to give it up, and we didn't. So maybe some of these we should have given up earlier. But to me, the two assets in Scotland, this is why I focus my time on them, always have, and will continue to, are Loch Harbour. That smelter now, we tested selling product to the US for the first time ever this summer. We are now selling half of our output to the US. Not because just the margins are good because of the Trump tariffs, because it's good business sense to diversify outside of what we're selling into the UK and Europe. And I think that will continue to go because the Americans are looking for, regardless if they fix relations with the Canadians, they're looking for a diverse supply. And it's the greenest in the world, that metal. We run that business very differently to anyone that has previously and probably anyone does because I'm a trader. And so I optimize the income and the flows of power to the grid as well as the amount of metal that we make. I will not put more pots on to make more metal unless I've seen a quarter forward of pricing that supports that. And I'm the one that killed the deals on the two projects because I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. There's too much risk once it gets built. As far as DL, that is probably one of the best mills in the country right now. It's plate, and as I said, we've run this huge defense contract. It's been painful keeping it on furlough. I had to delay it again because we had to do some refinancing, which we're completing this week. So were we the best donor? I don't know. But I look around at British Steel. I look at where Tata's at, Celsa changing hands, and we're still here for the most part. So have we made mistakes? Yes. Are there issues being investigated? Yes. Do I still think we're the right owner or partner for Scotland on the assets that we have? I would say yes.
I appreciate your frankness on that, but you can see why the optics around this are just absolutely dreadful. Absolutely. I mean, particularly when the Scottish Government is exposing the taxpayer to risk on the guarantees. Now, I appreciate the value of that risk has come down over the years. We've had some statistics around that. We've had government officials in to update us on those, and that's a welcome direction of travel, although there is still a huge amount of uncertainty as to how much revenue the Scottish Government and by de facto the taxpayer is actually earning from this deal. It's entirely opaque, I have to say. But the direction of travel is positive. But, given what you've just said, it seems to be a group of companies that just make really bad investment decisions. Why would you invest in a business that is uneconomic? You're not a charity, that's for sure.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I look at, when I came into Loch Harbour, and I'm not criticizing management. You never do. You make decisions as you do. There are a lot of things that were not managed properly. The estates were awful, first of all. Again, that's a small peanut compared to what there was no grid connection. There was no desire to get a grid connection. That grid connection changed the way we were able to manage that business. We export power when we don't need it to make metal. The power is there to make the metal at the end of the day. The smelter, when it's running out, needs, I think, 56 megawatts. There's 85 megawatts. We take it down in the summer because of the heat and keeping the reservoirs at a certain level. We're looking at also putting in battery storage alongside. So unfortunately, because of our financial position, I couldn't rush as far ahead as we could on these things. On the steel businesses, my team that was running the businesses in Sheffield had fixed that business. It had been mismanaged for years. It didn't make any money. Our customers were not paying what they should be. This is aerospace, defense, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, we had, again, and Scottish Government's met them, BlackRock is our funder, the biggest funder in the world of any size. So they fund funded our Australian businesses, they fund the US business, and they were going to fund the new steps in specialty steel. So, again, I've tried to, over the last 4.5 years, make sure I advise Scottish Government and their advisors, the good, bad, and the ugly. Again, there's some things I don't see, but I think they're the good businesses, and they're sustainable.
Just out of interest, what are the? We've only heard the good bits from the government. What's the bad and the ugly?
No, the bad and ugly that comes from our end. So, Companies House is going to issue this. I warn them. There's going to be an administration. Like Australia, I didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know that was going to happen. That was complete blindsided. There's some other things we've had to do in Europe, which I always warn them about. I keep them updated almost on a monthly basis on where the discussions were with Greensill on settling the debt issue over the last couple of years. So they have everything. It's very rare. They're like, oh, we've read this. This is not good. Sometimes it happens because I don't actually know when it happens. But I've always tried to make sure that they're informed, because at the end of the day, this is taxpayers' money that's backing this. There's not a dime that's been drawn down. I don't expect that to happen, quite frankly. But at the end of the day, I appreciate that. I'm a taxpayer. I understand that. I have a big issue with the South bailing out British Steel at £350 million right now, and still no strategy. No strategy still on what we left behind, even though we bid on it. So I take that quite seriously. And so I try to make sure, and even, this stuff with the Woodland Grant and the good things, we try and put it out there to, look like it's a good investment, because I know there's been some difficult investments up here.
Yeah, and I appreciate my line of questioning may come across as difficult, but as you say, it's taxpayers' money, and we have a duty as a committee, as does Audit Scotland as an organisation, to unearth what that risk looks and feels like. And there is still, is there a concern that if you're unable to appease your creditors or recapitalise properly as a wider group of businesses, then there is still a substantial level of risk to the Scottish Government and taxpayer? And roughly, have you identified what that risk might look like?
I don't think so. Quite frankly, the security that the government has is more than covered by the assets. Right. So if we tipped over, which that will not happen. Well, I can't say it'll never happen, but I don't see that happening. And if I did see there was a problem, and this is why they always know where's Greensill at with you, and going forward, and who's the funding going to be, and again, because those early issues about Greensill and SFO, getting funding has been a challenge, and it's really expensive. But at the end of the day, I do think that your investment is secure. And quite frankly, with the changes in post-Ukraine invasion of, we need to buy things closer to home strategically, and that includes steel and metals and plastics and other types of things, as well as the increase in defense spending. It is, again, one of the greenest, if not the greenest facility in the world. I would say maybe 4 or 5, 6 years ago, there was big risks of the smelter keeping going because of its cost structure. But right now, I'm quite confident that it's secure. In the last year, the number of JVs that have approached us to partner, and this is what got us to look at sending the metal to America and other parts of the world, has been dramatic. And it's not just the Trump tariffs. It's just the world has shifted on a commodity basis. So,
are you able to? Have there been any situations where you have lost out on new business opportunities because you simply don't have the capital to fund the raw materials?
No.
That's not the case.
No.
And more parochially, I suppose, looking at Lochaber, without going into the commercials of the deal that you made with the Scottish Government, there was, certainly in public knowledge, a commitment made to invest in the site. Yes. Now, there are various figures I've seen, 70, 80 million pounds. How much have you invested?
Well, there's an account set up to do that, and it has to be 70 million. Right now, the project we're looking at, I can't go to the details because I haven't shared the paper with the government. I assume you'll be able to access that at some point. But the project is substantial, and I see no problem in funding it whatsoever. And quite frankly, the one we're looking at now is very similar to a previous one. It will be less, will create the same number of jobs, and is actually more relevant to the world demand for that product. And it's on a similar footprint. So it's not like going back to the drawing board from ground zero. So if we do reach some agreement to do this, then it would start moving to be developed quite quickly.
That's a lot of what-ifs, isn't it? I mean, you promised 2,000 jobs back 5 years ago.
I don't know where that came from, quite frankly. Well, it was before my time, but I still...
Somebody must have made that
No, they did. Aghast, quite frankly, at why that...
So how many jobs?
We can't get housing for 40 new people.
No, I get that.
I can imagine getting 2,000, let alone the constructors. So I agree with you. I don't know where that... I apologize. I don't know where that came from.
How many jobs do you think you could create in that local area? I mean, we all want economic growth in the area for sure. So, you know, I'm with you on that, but I want to be realistic as well.
I mean, not a heck of a lot. I mean, we're looking at another 10 with this expansion, but it does shore up the existing business. If we could put more pots on, because we do run it quite efficiently, you know, we're not deploying any AI, or we can't do that for the business, quite frankly. It is labor intensive. But it's not huge. I actually think the bigger expansion in jobs will come out of some things that I want to do on the estates, quite frankly, going forward. And that we're finalizing as well, what that strategic plan will be. But as far as squeezing a heck of a lot more jobs out of the smelting business and the hydro business, I just can't. I can't see it, quite frankly. So the investment we're going to make will be to shore up and diversify the product range of the smelter and make it even more sustainable.
Okay, and just give me finally some reassurance that you're not going to just walk away from all of this.
No. I assure you, I will not walk away from this.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I just take you back to these downstream activities? Two things. So it was quoted at one point that it was anticipated that Jaguar, Land Rover and Nissan were going to be manufacturing 1 million vehicles, or 1 million cars equals 4 million wheels, and then you, as you said, killed that proposal, and then there was the billet plant as well. But could you explain to us what your rationale was for stopping the 4 million wheels being manufactured?
The first one?
Yeah, we'll go for that one.
China.
Okay.
End up.
The transfer of manufacturing of cars to China?
No, the wheels are made in China.
Okay.
It's just like we actually have a wind factory plant sitting at one of our sites because we are going to build wind towers, okay? Because we do have a 140 megawatt wind project in the works for Glen Shiro. And when I did the numbers on that, it doesn't work because the wind towers come from Vietnam or heavily subsidized Denmark. And again, it comes down to energy and other things. So that was that one. The billet plant, actually, you know, we did, and again, it's been out there for a while. We did all the market studies. We actually got letters of intent from off-takers, but the pricing was very volatile. It's a very commoditized product. And my fear was, and there were other plants coming online around the same time. So my fear was, once we got it going, that it would be difficult to keep that market share. And the capital investment was much bigger than what, when we started looking at it turned out to be. So those were the reasons. But I was quite a proponent of it for a long time. But then we really got into the numbers in the markets. There wasn't a proper market study, I think, nor a real updated market study in the wheels plant done until I came in. Okay. And so I just took the decision that this was not a good use of funds.
Yeah. And just related to that, one of the head of terms of the agreement between the company and the Scottish Government, Part 6, is that no distributions would be made by the hydro company or smelter company until a redacted sum of money is invested in an approved downstream activity. So has that term been met, i.e. there has been no distribution?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to invite Colin Beattie to put some questions to you. Colin.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to explore a bit around some more recent developments in terms of finance and so on. And excuse me if I jump around a wee bit on this. Back in March 21, when Greenshill Capital went into administration, GFG needed to refinance debt of approximately £5 billion across its companies. that was refinanced, not restructuring the debt. Does that still hold? It's still refinancing rather than restructuring, and the debt in 2021 was $5 billion. What is it now?
Well, that's still with the Greensill creditors. I think your term restructuring is step one, and step two was then refinancing the business. So that debt load that is sitting, 99% with the Greensill group of lenders is still there. That is still being adjudicated. We were very close to settling at the beginning of last year, and that pretty much because of issues that happened in Australia, fell apart. So we're in the process of still negotiating how that will come out. We do have funding vehicles, I think, as I mentioned, in the background. BlackRock being the first one. It's ain't cheap money, quite frankly. I think we're paying 15, 16%. We should be paying 9, 10. But that's what we've been lending to keep the businesses going. We've got a bunch of other smaller financiers that are lending to us. But at the end of the day, the previous two issues, Greensill and the investigation has really hindered being able to do that. A lot less so than it was 2 or 3 years ago. But yes, and I think, quite frankly, it's been recognized by the board, the lending was too concentrated into one group, and they were moving away from that, quite frankly. But what happened. And so, again, we have tried to keep a lot of the businesses going. There's some that, because of that high cost of debt that we did bring in later on, just couldn't meet it. So that is ongoing. But we're in a much better situation, even than a year ago, of bringing on new monies. Not huge amount, and it's very caveated. But, this is why I say, actually, the Scottish businesses, we don't actually have that issue between DL and between Loch Harbour because of where they are, because of the actual products they make.
I mean, as I said, the original amount that was needed refinancing was $5 billion. Has that increased?
No.
So it's still
it'll be reconstructed, as you say.
Yeah. Okay. Because the normal course I would
right now, all the funding other than what I've mentioned has come out of equity.
Okay.
So, as I said, the monies that we put into the UK to keep SSUK going, funds coming into Loch Harbour, DL, have been equity capital.
Now, you mentioned the optimism back in February 25 that an agreement had been reached with the creditors of Greensill. But it was subject to final legal binding agreement, and from what you say, that didn't happen.
Yep.
Which perhaps explains the issues around Liberty Steel.
Yes.
Because that was going to be restructured and fresh capital put in.
Yep.
Now, I'm going from newspaper reports, but I seem to recall that there was an issue with Liberty Steel in terms of providing steel under a contract for, I think it was naval contract, because they didn't have the capital, or at least the cash flow, to be able to pay for the raw materials to produce the steel. Am I remembering correctly on that?
Well, that's DL. So the Navantia contract, which we can say for a long time we couldn't say who it was because it being an MOD contract, took, I think, 10 months longer to award than it was supposed to. The markets were terrible for plate. Finally, UK Gov put some trade remedies in place to keep out basically Korean plate. So our plan, we did not want to restart the plant until that contract, again, we weren't sure it was going to come, but we were pretty sure because it had to be plate and it had to be UK sourced. And hello, it's only really DL. So that was much later. So we were awarded the contract. We did purchase the first shipment. I had a financing vehicle lined up, and they got the jitters towards the end of the year because of, number one, what's happening with British Steel not being sorted out. Number two, what happened with our business, Specialist Steels in Sheffield. Again, we don't have that issue on the aluminum business because it's a different animal. It can be hedged on the LME. But there is right now an issue. It's actually not as much us anymore. It's UK PLC and British policy on metals. But we have secured Mr. Beattie funding for DL. We're papering it right now. So I expect that plant will be up and running in the next, I don't know, Gordon, 3 or 4 weeks, once we procure the metal from British Steel, the slab feedstock into DL. But no, it's been a challenge. But once it gets going, and then we've got a couple other interested parties that want to take metal from that plant, it will go. So I'm confident. Again, a lot of this has been on the knife edge. Literally, they're supposed to be nailed down at the end of the year. It is unfortunately bled into February. But I'm confident we will get that going.
Just to make it clear in my mind, going back to the investigation that's underway, which obviously must cast a bit of a shadow on things, how many companies are actually involved in that issue?
I can't disclose. I'm sealed on anything with regarding the investigation. All I can tell you is that it's ongoing. We're fully engaged. We respond very quickly to anything that's asked, and I am the corresponding party. So I'm not telling you secondhand. I'm telling you as one who is zipped as far as saying anything. I'm not trying to obscure, but we can't talk about it.
No, I understand if it's an ongoing live investigation.
Yeah.
How many companies are actually involved in the refinancing?
Well, Greensill has interest in many of the businesses, just because of the structure of multiple countries and multiple jurisdictions and energy businesses and steel businesses and metal businesses. But at the end of the day, it all rolls up to there has to be a global settlement. So it will not be done piecemeal. And that's what we've been working on since day one, quite frankly. And again, I know we were close to being done in February. But unfortunately, what happened in Australia set off a chain reaction as far as the way that was going to be structured and funded. And so hopefully, the next few months, we'll be able to come back to settling with the Greensill people.
My next question was actually going to be about whether it was going to be individual refinancing or whether it was going to be across the board.
I think it has to be done along the group.
Yeah. Any idea when this might be concluded? It's obviously a major issue.
I can't tell you how many letters I sent out, agreements in principle, which you've seen. I think it'll either be in the next few months or towards the autumn.
Do any of the global entities involved here provide any security or guarantees in relation to the Scottish firm or the guarantee entered into with the Scottish Government?
That I'll pass to Helen.
That's all in the detail of the commercial arrangements, which I must admit I'm not entirely sure whether I'm able to disclose in a public forum.
The next question, of course, is still linked to that, which is, are any of these entities still subject to refinancing?
I can't comment.
Because that would obviously impact on the Scottish Government.
I look at the businesses as one, regardless of the structure. At the end of the day, there is one shareholder, and so we look at the businesses obviously regionally and funding them regionally by these arrangements I'm talking about, but the overall is managed at a global level. So the goal is to make sure that all of that is sorted as part of the restructuring and then the refinancing.
Okay. Thank you, Vina.
Okay, thank you. And I think Graham Simpson's got some questions to put to you. Graham.
Yeah, thanks very much. So do you think this alloy wheel plant will ever happen?
Here?
Yeah.
No way.
No chance?
No chance.
Right, so that's not going to happen. What about the aluminium billet factory?
Well, as I discussed earlier, that's it. We're looking to pivot to another project, which is going to haven't fully briefed formally Scottish Government. I think, to me, the capital cost of that for putting us in I would call it commodity business, which means it's got a lot of competition, a lot of price fluctuation, is not a good business for a smelter sitting up in northern Scotland to get into. So the one we're looking at now will be immune, we can't say fully, but pretty immune to that, because a lot of the product will actually go into the UK.
From the new project?
Yes, yes.
So whatever it is you're making there will be sold largely in the UK?
That's what we're planning on, yes.
But you're not...
Let's just say
you're not going to tell us what it is?
It's infrastructure driven.
Infrastructure driven?
Yes.
Right, how curious. So it'll be used
I got to give you something, right?
It'll be used to build things.
We did.
Whatever you're making will be used to build things.
Well, just that whole facility built, 1929. If you've been up there, is a feat of absolute engineering. So yes.
Okay. What about the port facility at Corpac?
Still operating.
Still
supports
operating.
Supports the businesses.
The canned mountain water business, did that ever happen?
I killed that.
You killed that?
Yeah.
Why?
Didn't see a point. Again, commodity business, very small. We're not in the retail business, so.
Okay. How many people are employed at Lochaber?
207. Yeah.
207. And you said earlier that you don't see that rising by very much.
No. So we've added 40 since we took it over. And again, the first, well, I'll go back to the 2000, but the second two projects will add about 10.
Okay.
But it will shore up, again, I would say, the diversity of the actual smelter and its products.
All right. Just going back to this mystery big project, when do you think we'll get an announcement on that?
Again, we have to go through the proper channels with your colleagues, the Scottish Government. We have briefed them on what we're looking at and why I want to do the pivot and the reasoning and the support why we're pivoting and why we should go this way. So I'm not going to say, well, that's done. We're going to say why. I got to properly stop the first one and then begin the second one. But again, it's such a similar footprint as far as the machinery and the requirements that it's not like a big change. Let's put it that way. So I would say, again, it's up to them on how long that process is, but hopefully sooner rather than later. I would say within the next couple, depending where we're at. We've done most of the engineering. There's more to be done. We've done the market studies on this, so there's not a lot of these boxes I have to go back and tick. The planning permission I think may need to be tweaked, but it's already there. This part will not go on peatland. The other one did, which had its own issues, obviously, and costs. So again, I'm hoping, actually the document's sitting on my desk. I need to get it across. But I'm hoping in the next couple of months we'll be able to move.
And do you need the Scottish Government's go-ahead for this?
Yes.
You do? Right, okay. I was interested, right at the start, you mentioned a woodland project. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, if you've been up there, we do quite a bit already as far as reforestation, restoring peatland. We've got the full staff of those that do deer management. But the issue is that over the last several years, it's not necessarily our estate, but some of the adjoining estates have not properly accomplished with deer management. And it's causing a big problem with the forests up in that part of the world. So we're replanting. We are restoring peatlands, and quite frankly, we're going to need to reduce the deer population over the next several years. It's the same issue you're seeing in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. Yeah. It's just, to be blunt, it's unfortunate, but the impact is visible if you go up there right now.
You said you got a grant to do this work.
It was just awarded last week.
How much was the grant?
2.3 million over 5 years, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, and that's to plant trees and
everything I've mentioned.
Yeah,
and it's heavily monitored by Forestry Conservation Commission, whatever it's called. So.
Forestry and Land Scotland.
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask you about DL, because DL's in the region that I represent. So if I was to go into DL tomorrow, I have been in the plant a few years ago, but what would I see? Presumably there's nothing happening at the moment?
No, they got going again, I think, in October, November, December, did a couple of runs. But as I said, to procure the next trains, the funding got, well, we've had to pivot to someone else, so we have now. So I would say we're planning an opening ceremony. Well, I would say the opening ceremony is probably going to be the beginning of May, because I want to make sure the plant is running first, so that when we bring people up, they can go out and see the plant running. So it's imminent. It's as soon as I finish up this funding, which will happen again the end of this week, beginning of next, we procure the metal from British Steel, and the plant will be. It's about 4 or 5 weeks, all in all, to get it to run again.
Okay,
and we have a contract. We have to supply.
That's what I was going to ask. You've definitely got this contract.
Yeah.
To make plates for warships.
Yes.
And that's from
Navantia.
But is it for British warships?
Yes.
Yes.
It's an MOD contract.
Yeah.
To Navantia, who bought Holland and Wolff, and that was part of the delay.
Okay.
And there's that, and we expect to be able to bid on more, because that's just one part of the contract. And there's some others that are also queuing up to for us to bid to supply on. So I'm confident once we get going, we'll be able to service those. Then again, look at also the general domestic market and the American market as well, because the margins are quite good for plate.
Okay. In terms of staffing at DL, what have you got there, and do you foresee it growing?
It's 107 just now, 107.
107.
We get back into production, we would add some extra bodies, probably about 10 to 15.
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Cable is required to answer the questions.
I know,
but yes,
107.
Yeah,
107. So we probably will add another 10 or 15. The thing is that in any of these things, that's doing a ramp up. If we really start to get it to full output, which at the end of the day is the goal, then that will be more people. I don't know what that number is, but Gordon has run those numbers. Apologies for referring to.
Okay. Is Clyde Bridge one of your facilities?
Yes.
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 So what's happening at Clyde Bridge at the moment?
We're in the process. Again, originally it was to house our factory to make wind towers. And as I said, I dusted it off and looked at it again a couple of years ago, and it just doesn't work from a competition standpoint. But right now, we are very close on a significant development project of that site. Hopefully, we'll be able to. And again, we work quite closely with Scottish Enterprise on that. There's been bits and backs and forth with those who are working with on it. But hopefully, in the next couple of months, we'll be able to announce what's going to happen with that site.
And that will be something that involves you rather than selling the site?
I expect we will probably sell the site.
You'll sell
but
the
we
site,
may
right.
keep, let me hedge myself, we may keep an interest because what goes there might be something we may look at doing at other sites.
Okay.
Around the world.
All right, that's all very interesting. If you are going to have an opening ceremony at the start of May at DL, you might want to wait until after the Scottish Parliament elections on May the 7th. And then you can invite local MSPs.
Will do.
And I may be one of them. You never know. Right. Thank you.
Joe, do you want to come in? Right, okay. I think we've pretty much come to the end of our time. I guess the final question, which goes back to the start in a sense, is so the Auditor General described the arrangement at Lochaber as, in his words, a complex transaction. I suppose we're interested to understand whether it's a unique arrangement or whether that's a model of power purchase, the guarantee and reimbursement agreement is something that you've seen anywhere else.
I've seen it in multiple other places, quite frankly. Not in the UK, but particularly in the developing world, in America, other parts of Europe. And it's usually around industrial assets that it's in, the taxpayer and our constituents and strategic interests to make sure it keeps going. Now, again, some things won't always work, but that was the intention, I believe, from the people at the time, and I think that was correct. And our intention at the time, and still is to invest and make sure the operations continue.
Okay, Mr Cable. I think the Deputy Convener has got one very last short question to put to you.
Yeah, the first was a point of clarification. When the alloy business went to China, is that a business that you owned, or did it go to a competitor?
We weren't in it anywhere.
You weren't in that space?
No. And it's again, I use the wind tower project as an example. We actually bought that plant for one that was gold-plated, built down in Wales. We dismantled it, took it apart, and it was sitting in shipping containers up in Clyde Bridge. And the market fell out. And I think there's only one left in the UK. There were several, because there's going to be all this wind power demand, and there still is. But yeah, unfortunately it did. Which, it should have, because we have the plate mill down the road. We have the estates to build them. So that was the thinking, that we've got the pieces, but that piece just didn't work. So the wheel plant was, to me, again, I wasn't there, and it just wasn't feasible.
No, but we are building ships, we are building wind turbines, yet we're importing 70% of our steel from overseas, but we have an indigenous market that's not been used to its full extent. What would your advice to government be?
Well, hopefully we will have a steel strategy coming out. I sit on the Steel Council. I ran International Steel Trade Association for a while as a side outside of my real world. And at the end of the day, we still have the right people. We still have the demand. It's not huge. What we make is mostly high end. So this business that we unfortunately lost in Sheffield is an aerospace defense business. And it's still not running, quite frankly. And there's some other businesses, the ones that Tata have that supply JLR, that are viable. But there's just a couple big issues. Number one, there's no strategy. There's supposed to be one promised, even in the previous government. So it's not. I'm not going to blame Labour on this. But it's energy costs, highest in the world, and you can't. It's a very intense business, and even with those energy prices, and we were going to make SSUK work, and DL will work because they're specialized products. So those are there. We can make those. And in some cases, it's not a huge investment, quite frankly. But there has to be a road to go forward. The money's out there to do it, but we need to know there's a road in order for that to happen. So I said the assets that we have are the right ones, quite frankly. And this is why we will continue to invest in them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Mr Cable, especially for your frankness and your time this morning. And again, let me put on record my apologies that we kept you waiting. I hope you don't miss your flight to Australia.
No, God.
As a result.
I'm going to go get on the phone with them.
Can I thank you very much indeed for being here and for the evidence that you've given us. It's been very useful for us. So my thanks on behalf of the committee to you and also to Helen Lambert as well for being here. And as previously agreed by the committee, I will now move us into private session.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.